Chapter 961. Other than the Marquis of Wild Tao, there was another Marquis captured. The Marquis of Chongshan, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum Metal. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family was an old Marquis family, and its territory was adjacent to the Marquis of Wild Tao's. However, compared to the Marquis of Wild Tao's domain knight strength, the 40-year-old Marquis of Chongshan only had the strength of a blade master. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family was derived from a potion flower, the metal chrysanthemum. The family's emblem was a circular medal in the shape of a chrysanthemum. Not only was Marquis Elton captured, but almost all of the territorial knight class was captured. At that time he summoned all of his followers to his Golden Chrysanthemum Castle, ready to defend the castle until the expansion order ended. Therefore, after Sapphire broke through the castle, none of the noble knight escaped. His territory alone contributed 4 earls, 12 viscounts, and a large number of knight. Your Highness, Elton doesn't have much choice. Most of his family's wealth has been plundered by the orders of chivalry. There is no way to pay the ransom for him and his followers. The speaker was Marquis of Wild Tao, D. Maria Yuwashi. In the study of Oxhoof Castle, the first person Liszt summoned was Marquis of Wild Tao. As an old acquaintance and a follower, Marquis of Wild Tao enjoyed the treatment of freedom. The two sipped tea across the desk. The atmosphere was very friendly. Marquis of Wild Tao had lived on Black Horse Island for a long time and fell in love with green tea. Since then he and the Flame Territory had been secretly smuggling sea salt, glass, white paper and other goods. The Yuwashi family had long been at odds with the Eagle Kingdom. It was normal for them to sway to the Flame Kingdom. Marquis de Maria, if the surrender is successful, what kind of treatment do you think the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family deserves? Liszt asked casually. De Maria smiled. Your Highness, there is actually a very good way to quickly subdue the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family. Well, tell me about it. Elton has a younger brother called Elroy. He is only a viscount, only 30 years old, but he is already an old blade master, not far from completion. It is only because of Elton's suppression that he has been unable to be promoted to Earl. Elton acts absurdly while Elroy acts calmly. At this point, De Maria's meaning was self-evident. Elton and Elroy were both sword saints, but it was obvious that Elroy was more talented and had a more mature personality. He was more suited to be the family head and inherit the Marquis position. Liszt could use this as an excuse to promote Elroy to the position of Marquis. Elroy would definitely be grateful to Liszt and control the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family well. However, Liszt had no intention of doing so. He smiled faintly. The Yuhua Stone family can be preserved, but the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family cannot be preserved. As long as Elton is willing to surrender, I can keep his Marquis title after the founding of the nation. But his followers will form new families on their own, and so will Elroy. Your Highness, what do you mean? For a moment, De Maria did not understand Liszt's intentions. The Flame Kingdom is a new country. The old powers need to be destroyed. This is not to prevent the clans from getting stronger, but to create more clans to assist me in ruling the Flame Islands. I understand, Your Highness. De Maria understood immediately. Indeed, the new kingdom needs too many nobles and knight. Actually, coming to this land, even if Your Highness does not break up the clans, the powerful nobles and knight will leave on their own. Your Highness, the Yuhua Stone family is also willing to break up. I will dismiss my knight followers one by one, including my nephew Deborah Yuhua Stone. Since we have come to the new kingdom, I hope that the Yuhua Stone family can also be reborn on this land and completely integrate into the Flame Kingdom. Liszt smiled slightly and nodded. You are a reasonable noble. Don't worry. Follow me and the Yuhua Stone family will only continue to grow and not decline. The population of the territory is not large, but there will be endless wars in the future. Enough people will be plundered to make up for the losses of the large clans. When he summoned the second Marquis, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum Metal, De Maria did not leave. He had already received Liszt's approval and became the knight's assistant. Elton, you and I have known each other for a long time. I have already clearly told you His Highness' intentions. Even if you do not break up, you will not have the ransom to redeem your followers. You can also see the growth of the Flame Kingdom and the decline of the Eagle Kingdom. I hope you can think clearly about your choice. After listening to De Maria's words, Elton glanced at Liszt, whose face was expressionless. He only allowed De Maria to summon him, and did not receive any friendly messages. With Liszt's status, he did not need to smile at any nobles. They were all prisoners of war at his disposal. Pay the ransom and leave or surrender and pledge loyalty. There were no other paths. If not for the fact that he was a great noble, he might not even see Liszt's face. But if I break up the family's followers, how will the Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family develop? For 3 years they will serve the kingdom and work the land for His Highness. After 3 years they will be in theft. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family can naturally rely on the Infeft territory to rise again. Without a knight, how can they rise? D. Maria said. After 3 years, there will definitely be a large number of knight who cannot be Infeft. You can naturally recruit these knight to serve your family. Then what about my elves? The elves are still yours, but they need to serve for 3 years. Either you pay the price of a few big elves, return to your territory in the Eagle Kingdom and continue to be free. Of course, if your territory is rich, you can also help pay the ransom for followers who are willing to go back. His Highness has always been tolerant of nobles and respects your wishes. Elton might have mediocre talent and acted preposterously, but he was, after all, born into a great noble family. Calculating for benefits was instinctive. After thinking for a moment, he nodded calmly. In that case, I am willing to follow behind His Highness. The Golden Chrysanthemum Metal family originally wanted to serve His Highness. After the 2 marquises, Liszt summoned 2 more nobles alone. One was a Sky Knight with the title of Earl at the level of perfection, Geoffrey Furonqui. He promised to be at least a Marquis title after the founding of the kingdom, and Geoffrey happily followed. The other was Elroy Golden Chrysanthemum Metal, a 30-year-old sword saint with good talent and imminent perfection. Without any need for Liszt to say more, he immediately expressed his willingness to follow. After that, in the banquet, Liszt invited all the 7 earls who had not yet chosen to pay the ransom to the banquet, and personally called for them to surrender. In the midst of hesitation, 6 earls finally announced their willingness to follow. Only 1 earl of the normal level Sky Knight, after thinking for a long time, still decided to pay the ransom. At this point, leaving aside the title, this time, Liszt directly subdued a Domain Knight, a Sky Knight at the level of perfection, 5 Sky Knights at the level of Sword Saint, and 25 Sky Knights at the level of ordinary Sky Knights. There were also more than 800 elite Earth Knights, more than 3,800 ordinary Earth Knights, and more than 7,600 trainee Knight. Liszt did not confiscate the sprites of these Knights, but only required them to serve for 3 years. The number of sprites he could really get was provided by the 4 earls who had paid the ransom, a total of 7 sprites. According to the requirements, at least 3 of them were potion and grain sprites. However, compared to the high-level manpower and material resources of the Knight and sprites, his biggest gain was the serfs at the bottom. More than 500,000 serfs, civilians and craftsmen were crazily transported to Flame Island. What the new Flame Kingdom needed the most was population replenishment. Sooner or later, everything could be obtained by plowing the land. As night fell, Liszt was looking at the spoils of war in the study. He said to himself regretfully, "The only thing that is a little disharmonious is that these Knight and serfs are all from the Eagle Kingdom. If only I could rob the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom a few times to dilute it." Chapter 962. After the Knight incorporation in Oxhoof City, Liszt did not stay long and hurriedly left Oxhoof Castle. First, he went to Black Horse Island and left the Grey Iron Dragon Orn there to continue suppressing the Flame territory. He also let the Pea Sprite Ash touch its scales to evolve. Then he returned to Flame Island. At this moment, Reed City could be said to be extremely crowded, and the air was filled with a foul stench. More than 500,000 serfs and knights were transferred here. Even though Reed Avenue had been repaired, it was still difficult to transport all the serfs out in a hurry. However, they just had to get through this period of chaos. In addition to the 5 major cities of Reed City, Fire City, Jade City, Dragon Valley City, and Estuary City, Flame Island had also opened up hundreds of settlements along the Whirlpool River Basin and around several avenues. Nearly 1.5 million Killer Moon serfs, in addition to cutting down the forest, were plowing the land and building wooden houses. A large number of wooden houses stood in the settlements, but they had always been empty and were still being built. Houses made of cement and brick were still high-end buildings and could not be popularized for serfs to live in for the time being. Wooden houses were the best choice and were also convenient to build. Because Liszt was very ambitious, regardless of whether there were people or not, he built a lot of ghost cities first. Since there were not enough seeds and many Killer Moon people could not plant fields, they simply built houses and tried to train them as construction workers to accumulate strength for the future infrastructure projects of the Flame Kingdom. However, in the chaos of Reed City, a lively open-air celebration banquet was about to be held. It had nothing to do with the captured knight, but Liszt's followers who had bravely won military exploits in the large-scale conferring war. Just this order of expansion alone had conferred more than 300 Lord Knight titles. These new nobles left gratefully without eating a bite of the food at the banquet. Today, basically 1 out of every 8 Earth Knights on Flame Island was a Lord Knight. The promotion rate was cheap. In the fief of other nobles, it was very difficult for an Earth Knight to be promoted to a Lord Knight. Here, one could be promoted by casually farming in World of Warcraft. The Baron has conferred more than 50 titles. The Knight of Flower Town and Black Horse Island have basically received the title of Baron. Baron Alvin Eagle's word, you have been forging magic equipment for the territory day and night. Although you have not set foot on the battlefield, you have made great contributions. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Viscount. Before the banquet, List read out the promotion list that had been written long ago. The Iron Knight, who had once fallen into such dire straits that his family's inherited weapon, the Ice Dragon slaying sword, was snatched away and he himself was thrown into prison, was so moved that 2 streams of tears rolled down his face. Your Highness, I, Arwen, am willing to serve your Highness for generations to come. Holding the knight's long sword, List tapped each of Arwen's shoulders. Then servants brought in noble costumes, badges and civilized sticks. After a set of procedures, Alvin stepped back. List read from the list, Marcus Wheel, step forward. Marcus suddenly trembled as he walked in front of List and knelt on one knee. Your Highness. Marcus Baron Wheel, since the time of Flower Town, you have been training in orders of chivalry for my territory. You have worked day and night, trembling with fear, not daring to relax. You have made great contributions. In orders of expansion, you have taken the lead and beheaded many enemy knights. You have made great contributions. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Viscount. Your Highness, I, Marcus, am willing to fight for your Highness and serve the Flame family for generations to come. Marcus took a deep breath and swore in the tone of a fanatic. The elite Earth Knight who first followed List had his dreams realized early on. Now, every step forward was a huge dreamlike development for him. Although he knew in his heart that Viscount was basically his pinnacle title. Without becoming a Sky Knight, he could not be conferred the title of Count. This was the rule of the Knight system. But he still had a son and he would do his best to cultivate his son. As long as he firmly followed behind his Highness, the title of Count was definitely not a chasm. Handing Marcus the costume badge and cane, List smiled slightly. Teacher Marcus, it is time to give your family a new surname. Yes, your Highness. Marcus bowed and retreated. At this time List continued to read, Gort Baron Mast. Subsequently, several officials such as Gort and Charles as well as several elite Earth Knights with veteran status, were conferred the title of Viscount one after another. Everyone expressed a lot of grateful declarations after the conferment. And this was not the end. At the final climax of the conferment ceremony, List was still reading, Paris, step forward. Your Highness. The light magic great swordsman Paris, knelt on one knee. Baron Paris, you have been my guard since the Flower Town era. During the Black Horse Island era, you served as the territory patrol leader and participated in the construction of the Flame Island territory. During the war you have charged into the enemy lines and reaped great rewards. You have personally captured the Sky Knight. Your outstanding military service is outstanding. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Count. She was a veteran of the Flower Town era and the first person to be conferred the title of Count. As a light magic great swordsman, her strength was comparable to that of a sacred swordsman, and she was enough to assume the title of Count. Paris solemnly replied, Your Highness, glory favors you. Paris is willing to charge into the enemy lines for your Highness and serve the Flame family for generations to come. The knight's sword pointed at Paris's shoulder. List nodded and said, You are the first countess of the territory. You should set an example for all the female knight in the territory. I hope you can take on more important responsibilities in the future. Yes, your Highness. After Paris withdrew, the conferment ceremony was still not over. At this time, the gazes of all the aristocrats were cast on another female figure that was slowly walking forward, Emily. This seemingly young girl had strength that made everyone jealous, amazed and awed. She had also obtained the ultimate dream of a knight. Dragon riding. Many aristocrats of the territory already knew that Emily, the most terrifying talent at His Highness' side, had already begun to make contact with the light green gem dragon, preparing to ride the dragon. The Fire Kingdom could give birth to a second dragon knight at any time. Once it succeeded, she would be the only female dragon knight in the entire history of the legendary continent. Your Highness. Emily knelt on one knee. I'm very pleased. I've seen your growth bit by bit. In the past, when a thin and weak little girl pledged loyalty to me in a childish tone, who would have thought that one day you would grow to such heights? And all of this happened in just 3 or 4 years. Liszt didn't use official lines like before. He expressed his admiration for Emily without any scruples. This girl never let him down. Baron Emily, when you were managing the giant elephant orders of chivalry, you worked hard and made great contributions. In the war to open up the order of chivalry, you were even more meritorious. Today I have decided to confer you the title of Earl. Your Highness, Emily is willing to be the spear and sword of your Highness. After the process was completed, Liszt said again, you are still young. The title of Earl is not your final destination. Continue to work hard. As you wish, Your Highness. Looking at the followers who were conferred titles and those who were not, Liszt smiled and said, those who are not conferred titles continue to work hard. Those who are conferred titles continue to work even harder. Within 3 years the Fire Kingdom will be established. When the kingdom is established, you will be conferred lands according to your titles. I hope that by then countless aristocrats will be born from you. Your Highness, please. At this point the conferment ceremony ended, and the banquet started immediately. Please remember the original domain name of this book. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 963. Early the next morning, after Liszt finished his morning training, he held another high-level noble meeting. Not only the Knight of the Flame Territory, but also the noble knight who had just been captured from the Eagle Kingdom, and 2 mages attended the meeting. The knight and mages were all seated at the conference table. Butler Carter, together with a few servants, poured a cup of fragrant milk in front of every knight and sorcerer with a long spout iron kettle. Liszt picked up the cup and tasted it gracefully. This milk tea is different. Di Maria, you may not know since you just arrived. This is the milk produced by the dragon-type cow, Banpo cow. Long-term drinking has great benefits for training. The ranch is expanding the scale of Banpo cow. In the future, all the knight of the kingdom, especially the young knight, will be able to drink Banpo cow's milk. Di Maria picked up the cup, tasted it deeply and could not help but praise, it's indeed the milk produced by the cow. The effect can't be felt yet, but the taste is fragrant. It's better than any milk I've ever drunk. It's indeed delicious. The taste is delicate and soft. It's enough to drink Banpo cow's milk every day. Your Highness, I didn't expect to be able to drink the milk of a dragon-type cow one day. The new nobles were full of admiration. Whether they liked it or not, it was right to brag. In fact, Banpo cow's milk was indeed worth bragging about. Among the dragon-type creatures, dragon-type wild beasts were the lowest level, but they were also the rarest. According to Liszt and Achi's research speculation, the conditions to infect dragon-type wild beasts were very harsh. It had to be a young dragon to infect wild beasts, and the bloodline infection power would not cause the beast to explode. Adult dragons basically did not have the possibility of infecting dragon-type wild beasts. The bloodline infection power was very violent, and non-warcraft could not withstand it. Therefore, dragon-type wild beasts had always been rare. The Sapphire family had raised the Sapphire dragon for 100 or 200 years. There was only a group of blue blood horses that were unknown if they were infected by the Sapphire dragon. The royal families of the 3 kingdoms all had some dragon beasts that were infected by adult dragons. Young dragons and dragon-type wild beasts were almost unheard of. Liszt controlled 3 types of dragon beasts, black blood horse, Banpo cattle and estuary pig. He still had 2 young dragons, the fire dragon Leo and the invisible dragon Bard. In the future he would continue to explore the infectious power of their bloodline and infect more dragon-type beasts. After drinking the milk tea, the meeting entered the main topic. Liszt was not a fan of long-winded arguments and he always got straight to the point. The influx of knight and civilians has injected new blood into the development of Blazing Island. Population is always the source of a country's development. But we also need to see the current chaos in the territory. After a pause he continued, the management work is very difficult, but I believe that all of you can handle it well. In 1 month I need to see all the new and old people living and working in peace and contentment. As for the new knight, you must also adapt to your new identity within this month and coordinate your work direction. As you wish, Your Highness. The followers responded in unison. Liszt nodded and said, I don't often stay in Firewood Castle. My father, Marquis Oxtail, will be staying in Firewood Castle for a long time. When I leave, he will be in charge of the development of the territory. Lee William took over Liszt's topic and said, Everyone, let us work hard for the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. As the father of the Dragon Knight and the father of the future king, He was in charge of the development of the territory. The night class would not have any objections. Everyone nodded in acknowledgement. List announced the second personnel decision. The development of the kingdom is huge, and the transportation is not convenient. In order to better assist Marquis Oxtail in his management work, I will directly set up a development committee as a temporary cabinet before the establishment of the Fire Kingdom. Every royal family would set up a cabinet, and the nobles would enter the palace as ministers to coordinate the affairs of the kingdom. Although the Fire Kingdom had not been established yet, it was only a matter of time. Therefore it was necessary to set up a temporary cabinet. In the current situation where there was no land to enjoy, the noble knight who participated in the meeting all looked at List with hope, hoping that he could be selected as a member of the development committee. List's gaze swept over the many noble knight who were eager to try. He directly announced, Marquis Oxtail will be the chairman, D. Maria Uwashi will be the vice-chairman, Gort, Marcus, Elton Golden Chrysanthemum, Geoffrey Furonqui, Duarte Red Apricot, Emily, and Paris will be the committee members. Chris and Kenley will be the special committee members to coordinate the Guild of Magic's participation in the development of the territory. When the results came out, some were pleasantly surprised, some were disappointed, but no one raised any objections. It was reasonable for Marquis Oxtail to be the chairman. D. Maria, who had just surrendered, immediately became the vice-chairman. This was completely List's way of thanking him for his performance in persuading List to surrender. Moreover, D. Maria was a domain knight and had been a marquis for many years. His original fief was also very rich, and his management work was trustworthy. Gort and Marcus had low ranks and low strength, but they were List's confidants. During the Flower Town era, they had served as List's teachers, and their relationship was not ordinary. Geoffrey had also just surrendered. He was a domain knight at the perfection level in his prime, and had a heart to improve. List was looking forward to his performance. Duarte was a count who had already surrendered during the Black Horse Island era, so it was reasonable for him to be valued. There was no need to talk about Emily, as she was the only candidate for the Dragon Knight plan. There was also no need to talk about Paris, as many people in the territory were rumored to be the Lord's secret lover. Only Elton, who had been strongly advocated by the two marquises during the discussion between List, Lee William and D. Maria last night. List himself looked down on this kind of good-for-nothing who liked to suppress his brothers. He was born as a second son, and he always felt that the noble families were too harsh on the second sons. China traditionally had the concept of more children bringing more blessings, but the nobles here only needed one child. If they had more, there would not be enough resources to nurture them, so they could only be kicked out of the family and let the second son fight on his own. Of course, the greater the noble, the less harsh the concept of second sons. After all, the family was rich and they did not mind nurturing a few more children. Elton was born a great noble, but he treated his more talented younger brother harshly. It was clear that his character was poor. However, Lee William and D. Maria believed that the territory was in chaos at this stage, and that it was key to stabilize the knight hierarchy as soon as possible. And if a noble with a high rank was put in an important position, the knight hierarchy would quickly feel at ease. List did not worry too much about such things and readily went with the flow. Thus, Elton joined the development committee. As for the two great magicians, Chris and Kenley, they served as special committee members to coordinate the Guild of Magic. They themselves did not participate in the construction of the territory, but focused on the research work of the Guild of Magic, as an existence similar to the Academy of Sciences. Everyone, the important task of developing Flame Island will be handed over to you. As you wish, Your Highness. At the end of the meeting, the development committee announced to the public, and the significance of the temporary cabinet quickly became apparent. All official work was no longer crowded on List's desk. Therefore he took some time, brought a chi, and quickly headed to the volcano of Doomsday. Through the deal of 20 bottles of Red Dragon water, Leo had already agreed to cause an eruption at the volcano of Doomsday. Chapter 964. A chi couldn't dive under the volcano, so she could only wait for the phoenix to be born before doing research, or study the blood-red rough stone named Stone of Phoenix Blood. The stone was rich in fire magic. After a chi's preliminary research, the function of this stone was to condense fire magic. It could rely on some special properties to gather the free fire magic in the surrounding air to form an abundant fire environment. The accumulation of many Stone of Phoenix Blood was equivalent to building a magic circle to provide an incubation environment for the phoenix egg. After the phoenix is born, these Stone of Phoenix Blood can be mined and condensed into a fire training field in the Knight Academy for the knight with fire chi to cultivate. List thought, and the stone of phoenix blood can be placed together with the phoenix perching parasol tree to attract more red sparrows and flame dragon birds. Once these firebirds were tamed as mounts, they would definitely be powerful. The elite guards of the Burning Legion, Orders of Chivalry, could rely on red sparrows and flame dragon birds as mounts. The Sky Knight rode the flame dragon bird, and the elite Earth Knight rode the red sparrow. I'll go down with Leo to check if there's anything wrong with the egg. If there's no problem, we'll guide the volcano to erupt today and help the phoenix be born. Okay. Soon List, wrapped in Leo's flames, came to the dry passage with ease and trotted all the way into the cave. The phoenix egg didn't change and the dead branches below were still burning. Touching the egg with his fingers, he felt the yearning for freedom again. This was a primitive emotion, not a soul with subjective consciousness. But he still couldn't help but rely on the unreliable emotional communication with the phoenix egg until he couldn't hold his breath. Back to the ground. It's time to start. List rode on Leo, took a deep breath, and began to circle around the crater of Doomsday. Leo's dragon magic quickly resonated with the lingering magic of the volcano. This was a kind of innate magical ability that originated from the bloodline instinct. When the resonance reached the level of resonance, the crater of Doomsday, which used to be calm and only emitted hot air, trembled slightly from the depths of the ground. The trembling tremors increased as Leo continued to circle. What came out of the crater was no longer just hot air, but also thick black smoke. The mountain also began to collapse. Rocks cracked in many places and rolled down the mountain. The ground within dozens of kilometers was shaking, and the clouds in the sky were stirred up by the tremors. They quickly gathered into ring-shaped dark clouds and connected with the volcanic smoke, forming a black umbrella. Suddenly, a mouthful of dark red lava spewed out from the crater of the volcano, but it soon stopped. But in less than a minute, another mouthful of dark red magma spewed out, and then the magma began to erupt intermittently. Looking from afar, the volcano of Doomsday looked like it was breathing rapidly, constantly expanding and shrinking, accumulating energy in preparation for the moment when it would erupt. Time passed by slowly. In the blink of an eye, List and Leo had already been at the resonance volcano for 20 minutes. At this moment, the volcano of Doomsday that had been accumulating power finally welcomed its earth-shattering moment. The thick smoke between the heavens and the earth was suddenly dispersed by a pillar of fiery red magma. This magma pillar was like a spear piercing the sun, piercing through the rainbow and shooting up to 300 meters into the sky. The splashing magma was like exploding fireworks. The fiery red magma splashed everywhere, quickly drowning the entire volcano of Doomsday. At this moment, it was as if the magma pillar was the entire world, destroying the heavens and the earth. Ichi was riding Charlie the unicorn. She had already hidden very far away, but she could still feel the heat from the volcano eruption. Charlie, this is the masterpiece of Big Brother and Leo. Isn't it beautiful? Snort. Charlie let out a snort of unknown meaning. Although it was a magical unicorn, many of its habits were not much different from a horse. The phoenix is about to come out. In the legends, the phoenix is a magical creature like you, Charlie. Ichi touched Charlie's mane and said. Charlie shook his head as if expressing his disdain. Around the magma pillar. Leo panted heavily as he dodged the falling magma. He was not afraid of the burning magma at all, but he had to be careful with List on his back. If he caused the volcano to erupt and burned his knight to death, then it would be a huge joke. Fortunately, when the magma pillar gradually weakened and only thick smoke was left, Leo and List were still unharmed. It was just that they had used up a lot of supreme magic. But with the red dragon water, Leo did not suffer a loss. Moreover, after causing the volcano to erupt, he felt many volcano supreme magic become active again. He breathed deeply and absorbed these volcano supreme magic. Let's go, Leo. Wrap yourself in flames. Let's go take a look at the phoenix egg. List took a deep breath of the outside air and rode Leo into the mouth of the flame amidst the thick smoke. The magma was still slowly overflowing. Diving into the depths of the magma, he could feel that there were many cracks in the entire magma tunnel. Luckily, the main tunnels were still intact, and the branching dry tunnels did not collapse due to the tremors of the volcano. Running quickly, he rushed into the cave. The circular cave walls were full of cracks, and dense volcano supreme magic gathered here. Golden light flashed violently. That was the phoenix egg struggling to break out of its shell. But what surprised List was that the egg could not break out of its shell. The phoenix inside seemed to be struggling and could not come out. When he got closer, he could feel the phoenix's primitive emotions, unwillingness and anxiety. A strong impact on his senses. What's going on? According to the information from the phoenix egg, it needs a volcanic eruption to break out of its shell. Why can't it do it? List frowned. He focused and summoned the smoke mission. Mission: 1 reincarnation every 500 years. Wait for the opportunity to be reborn. This is the immortal phoenix. Its noble character is indescribable, and its power is mysterious. Since you are fated to see the phoenix and wait for its rebirth, you must naturally help it. Please hatch the phoenix egg. Reward: a phoenix. There were no changes and there was not much information for him to learn from. The power of fate wants me to help it. I have already used 20 red dragon water in exchange for Leo's help. Can be said that I am helping it with everything I have. Why is it still not successful? Seeing that the phoenix egg struggle was getting weaker and weaker, List began to feel anxious. Could it be that you want me to help break the egg? This was obviously just a thought. He reached out to touch the flashing phoenix egg, trying to get new information from it. However, in the emotional exchange he could only feel the despair of the phoenix. He could not get any useful information. The phoenix egg had not hatched yet, and the soul did not seem to have formed, so he could not get any clear information. Leo sensed the phoenix's imminent danger through List, so he immediately sent out his consciousness. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that the phoenix egg hadn't died yet and eat it to nourish himself. List suddenly thought of something and quickly took out 3 phoenix feathers from his spatial ring. These were not phoenix feathers, but the tail feathers of the fire dragon bird. Most of them had been absorbed by Leo, and only 3 were left for emergencies. He quickly placed the phoenix feathers on top of the phoenix egg. In the next moment the phoenix seemed to feel something. The surface of the egg flashed, and the 3 phoenix feathers turned into ashes. All the magic was absorbed by the egg. But this magic was obviously not enough to satisfy the need for the phoenix to hatch. List could only look at Leo again. Leo, it's time for you to perform again. Chapter 965. Oh. As expected, Leo rejected him without hesitation. Let's be reasonable. If you didn't absorb all the volcano super magic in the volcano of Doomsday, the phoenix would have enough magic to incubate. Of course it's not your fault. It's all ownerless resources. Whoever gets it can have it. Besides, Flame Island is my territory. He quickly communicated with Leo in his mind. Reasoning was useless. In the end he traded with the red dragon water. With the continuous consumption, List only had 50 bottles of red dragon water left. Leo quickly stated his bottom line price, 50 tubes. He wanted to squeeze out all of List's stock in one go. Okay. At this critical moment, List could not bargain. Since both his hands were his dragons, it was not a loss to give the red dragon water to Leo. Quickly. He put his hand on the phoenix egg. Leo's dragon super magic flowed through his hand and into the phoenix egg through his fighting energy meridian. Like rain after a long drought, the phoenix egg sensed the dragon super magic and began to absorb crazily. An endless stream of dragon super magic entered the phoenix egg, causing the golden light on the egg to shine again. The phoenix could break out of the egg at any time. However, something unexpected happened. At this moment, Leo, who was attached to List's chest, activated his magic at lightning speed. Not only did he pull back all the leaked dragon super magic, but he also sucked all the magic in the phoenix egg into List's body. Then the essence of the phoenix egg began to flow toward where he was attached. He was going back on his word and directly swallowed the phoenix egg. Stop, Leo. List did not have the time to express his anger at Leo's behavior. He overestimated the evil dragon's character. He thought that by using emotion, reason, and benefits, he could make the dragon compromise. He did not expect that Leo would go back on his word because of his lust. The phoenix egg lost its luster at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it became a dark red stone the size of a football. Its essence entered List's body along with Leo's magic. Even that primitive consciousness entered List's body and quickly connected with his thoughts. He could sense that the pure, unadulterated soul was on the verge of collapse before it could even form a complete phoenix personality. Leo exuded a greedy thought, wanting to devour everything about the phoenix. However, List acted decisively at this moment. He quickly activated his dragon warrior energy and forcefully cut off Leo's magic power, cutting off his greed for the phoenix essence. He then tried to reverse the flow of his chi and send the phoenix essence back into the egg. It didn't matter if he couldn't hatch it for the time being. He could hatch it again in the future. It was a pity. The nature of the phoenix egg had changed along with the extraction of the phoenix essence, and it could no longer receive any magic. In the blink of an eye, the phoenix essence fused into List's body, fusing into his limbs and bones, fusing into the depths of his cells. The phoenix's primordial soul was also pulled into his soul by the power in his mind. His spiritual force, which had already been strengthened by the power of destiny, expanded even more at this moment, and his mind was filled with countless pieces of information. The most obvious manifestation was in his eyes, where flames burned and danced. Inheritance, Phoenix. I actually fused with the phoenix, or has my body become a carrier for the phoenix's rebirth? The information flow was too powerful. It was the innate ability of the phoenix's bloodline. This made Liszt instantly understand what had just happened. The phoenix had the ability to be reborn from the ashes. After being schemed against by Liszt, when it was about to die, it relied on its instinct to fuse its ability with Liszt's body, wanting to be reborn in Liszt's body. It was unknown what would happen after the rebirth. Would Liszt obtain everything about the phoenix, or would the phoenix replace Liszt, or would the two coexist in the same body? However, none of this happened. The power of destiny took action. The smoke dragon's power attached to Liszt's body directly pulled the phoenix's primordial soul over, using it as nourishment for Liszt's soul. Thus, the phoenix's rebirth ability fell silent and sank into the depths of Liszt's body. It's a pity that there are no more phoenixes in this world, he sighed. However, the next moment, the flames in his eyes suddenly flickered with a bright light. But I am a phoenix now. Then flames rose from his body. The next second, Liszt's hand seemed to quickly melt into flames. From the flames, a pair of wings covered in golden feathers condensed. He suddenly flapped his wings, bent his legs and jumped. His whole body rose into the air and flew around the spherical cave. The flames on his body became stronger and stronger, completely melting him. The flames did not extinguish, but what was wrapped in it was no longer a human. Instead, it was a phoenix bathed in golden and red flames. It was handsome, slender and had golden and red gem-like feathers. Its whole body was similar to a fire dragon bird, but flames accompanied every part of its body at all times. Its tail was no longer 7 tail feathers, but 9 tail feathers made of flames. Gold and red reflected each other, and the flames and feathers merged into one. At this moment, the phoenix that Liszt had transformed into was the flames, and the flames were the phoenix. What a wonderful feeling, a miraculous experience. Leo's scheme, although the phoenix hatching failed, gave me an ability similar to a druid's transformation. The phoenix's essence had already integrated into his limbs, bones, and the depths of all his cells, just like the blood code of the sun's child. This was most likely a transformation spell established at the genetic level. And his soul had just devoured the phoenix's original soul, so it was easy to control the phoenix's power. Roar! Leo was still attached to the phoenix incarnated Liszt's body. Although he coveted the phoenix's power, he could no longer seize it. His heart stirred. Liszt retracted the phoenix's power and regained his human body. He equipped his chi equipment and put on his clothes again to avoid exposing himself. Even if there was no one around, he could not casually expose his body. He quickly stored the already dim phoenix egg as well as the extinguished pile of firewood into his space ring. Looking at the phoenix bloodstone on the cave wall, he sank into contemplation. In a flash, smoke serpentines floated before his eyes. Mission failed. You devoured the phoenix. This was his second smoke mission failure. Previously he failed to evolve the tulip sprite worm, and this time he failed to hatch the phoenix. It was a pity, but it was also a blessing in disguise as he obtained the ability to transform into the phoenix. After returning, I have to speed up the process of restraining Leo. I have to complete the spirit imprint as soon as possible, so as to avoid this kind of situation from happening again in the future. He could not be angry with Leo. Leo's nature was that of a vicious dragon, and everything stemmed from its instincts. He could only blame himself for not being prepared enough to thoroughly control Leo. At this time, a new smoke mission was issued. Mission: the demise of a worldly oddity often indicates the changes of the times. Even fate is constantly changing. You have to learn to make the right choice amidst the many changes and grasp the laws of the world. Please leave behind a fire seed for the phoenix. Reward: birds paying homage to the phoenix. Chapter 966. Preserve the fire seed for the phoenix? When Liszt saw the content of the smoke mission, his eyes suddenly lit up. This meant that the phoenix might not really die, there was still hope for it to be born. But what should I do? He inexplicably thought of the phoenix egg he had put in the space ring. Although it had lost its essence and become a lifeless stone, he had not carefully verified whether there was still a phoenix aura in it. Perhaps this magical creature had other ways to preserve the fire seed. Go back and analyze the situation with a chi, let her study how to preserve the phoenix fire seed. I can't think of a way here. He glanced at the stone of phoenix blood on the walls of the cave. He really wanted to dig all of them out, but this cave was neither big nor small. He could extract at least 100 tons of stone of phoenix blood, and it would take a long time to dig them all out. Moreover, no serfs could come down, so he had to dig out the phoenix blood stone by himself, which was very troublesome. I will leave it for the time being. If the phoenix egg really retains the fire seed, perhaps this is still the best place to breed the phoenix. As long as the volcano of doomsday is not extinguished, sooner or later a real phoenix can be reborn here. He shook his head. He spoke to Fire Dragon Leo in his heart. Leo, don't come to the volcano of doomsday to cultivate in the future. I will seal this place and breed the phoenix. Leo was very reluctant, but he had already understood the suppressed anger in List's heart, so he didn't dare to act rashly. List gained the ability to transform into a phoenix through misfortune, but he still hoped to get a single real phoenix. After all, after obtaining the ability to transform into a phoenix, his body had undergone unknown changes, and he couldn't guess whether this change was good or bad. However, as described in the Smoke Mission, even fate was constantly changing. Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. Now that the choice had been made, the bad choice had to be made up for as soon as possible and get back on the right track. The good choice had to continue to go in and accumulate greater benefits. Let's go. List did not call Leo to transform into a flame. Instead, he leaped and quickly transformed into a noble, beautiful, and domineering phoenix with a wingspan of 3 meters and a body length of 3 meters. Although his body was not big, he was like a monarch in the flames, and his brilliance was unfathomable. The wings flapped. Like a fiery red arrow, it sped through the passageway. This was not because it relied on air currents to fly, but because of the phoenix's innate ability to control fire, allowing it to fly as gracefully as a flame. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the magma. Without any hesitation, he dived into the magma. Like a ball of fire, List quickly merged with magma. At this moment, List also had the abilities of Fire Dragon Leo. That was because the phoenix he had transformed into was also made up of fire attribute supreme demons. However, the nature of the fire attribute was slightly different, and it had a more endless charm. Leo's fire element was the ultimate fire element magic power with the eternal nature. The phoenix's supreme fire element magic power, on the other hand, was the ultimate fire element magic power with the property of resurrection. Both types of fire super spells were the ultimate manifestation of fire mana, but in different directions. Just like how every species of dragon had different supreme magic, it seemed that once a creature developed to the supreme magic level, it would obtain a unique extreme. As List flew through the magma, a lot of information continuously attacked List's soul. These were all engraved in his phoenix bloodline. But soon he rushed out of the magma and into the dark sky. At this moment, the sky was filled with thick volcanic clouds, which blocked the sun's illumination. He quickly rushed into the sky, soaring for 90,000 miles until he broke through the dark gray volcanic clouds and reached a higher sky, where he could see the entire mountain and land. Only then did he steadily hover in the air. The golden and red feathers and flames made his phoenix incarnation look like a new red sun. Flying on a dragon and flying on his own were two completely different feelings. At this moment he really wanted to open his mouth and cheer loudly. However, from the phoenix's beak came a mysterious rhythmic cry that was sharp, sonorous, dignified, and lively. Screech. It was similar to the cry of the flame dragon bird, but the nobility revealed in it was not something that the flame dragon bird could have. In the phoenix's field of vision, he looked like a normal human, but he could see many red spots of light on the ground. He could instinctively distinguish the nature of those flames: the magic power of the volcano, the magic power of the magical beasts, the magic power of the plants, the natural flames, and the fire magic power floating in the air. However, the phoenix could not clearly see the situation of the magic power outside of the flames. After hovering in the air for a while, it familiarized itself with the phoenix's flying ability. After a while, it found the location of the phoenix parasol forest and flew directly there. It's very fast. I feel that it should be supersonic. It's not slower than a cheese unicorn, Charlie, maybe even faster. It's just that my phoenix incarnation is still in its infancy, and has not been fully developed. In a few breaths, he had already arrived at the phoenix parasol forest. The flame dragon bird and red sparrow that were entrenched here seemed to have sensed the phoenix's presence. The originally cheerful birds all hid in the forest and trembled in fear. The phoenix did not have draconic aura. However, its presence was an existence that all Fire Element World of Warcraft feared from the heart. It was even more fearful than normal World of Warcraft's draconic aura. Screech. List saw a Chi who was curiously looking at the phoenix. He wanted to greet her, but found that he was still speaking in bird language. Of course. After coming back to his senses, he immediately retracted his phoenix incarnation, put on his clothes and summoned Fire Dragon. Under a Chi's surprised gaze, he rode on Leo and came to her side. What, don't you recognize me? A Chi opened her small mouth in surprise. Big brother, how did you become a phoenix? It's a long story. At this time, without the suppression of the phoenix's presence, the flame dragon bird and red sparrow in the phoenix parasol forest had not yet recovered. They were swept by Fire Dragon's draconic aura and were scared out of their wits. Only the phoenix parasol tree great elf, Ainfint, flew over on Goldie and looked at List curiously. It seemed like it did not recognize List. Only when Leo looked at it and Goldie in disdain did it confirm that it did not recognize the wrong person. List, you've become a flame dragon bird. Ainfint, I've become a phoenix, not a flame dragon bird. Screech, it looks so similar. It doesn't look like it at all. The flame dragon bird looks like a sparrow. How can it compare to the domineering and noble phoenix incarnation? But it really looks like it. Screech, but it's even more beautiful. Come here. He hugged Ainfint in his arms and then continued to communicate with a Chi. Because of Leo's destruction, the phoenix couldn't hatch. Instead, it fused with me, giving me an ability similar to a druid's transformation. A Chi, help me study the phoenix incarnation in the next few days. A Chi nodded. Of course, a Chi will definitely help Big Brother dig out all the pros and cons of the phoenix incarnation. Chapter 967. A Chi's research task was very heavy. List was distressed, but he couldn't leave her research. The phoenix egg, dry firewood, and phoenix bloodstone had been handed over to a Chi to study how to preserve the phoenix fire seed. Of course, the most important thing was to study the phoenix incarnation to match the phoenix egg and preserve the phoenix fire seed. Brother, this is the ability of the phoenix incarnation for the time being. There may be some hidden abilities such as rebirth from the fire, but it is very difficult to study. It is best not to try it for brother's safety. A Chi handed the research materials to List. As for magic, a Chi will try to help brother improve it. According to a Chi's research and List's information from the Phoenix bloodline, the abilities of the Phoenix incarnation were basically created. There were about 6 magical and incredible abilities. The first one, Rising Flames, the Phoenix had the ability to fly in flames. As long as there was a gap, its speed could exceed the speed of sound. Even if there was a wall in front, as long as there was a slightly large gap in the wall, it could directly rush through. The second one, Physical Immunity, the Phoenix incarnation was the form of supreme magic condensation. Any physical attack could not cause damage to the Phoenix incarnation, which was equivalent to an immortal body. The third one, Monstrous Magic, many fire magic was engraved in the bloodline instinct of the Phoenix incarnation. However, List could only cast a magic similar to Flame Cut. After all, his Phoenix incarnation was still in its infancy, but Flame Cut was based on high magic, and its power was equivalent to that of an ordinary magic shooter. Slightly inferior to the fighting power of a dragon, it obviously could not reach the magic level of a Chi who was riding a unicorn. List hoped that a Chi could help him design a few simple magic that was suitable for the Phoenix incarnation. If he used talent magic, it would consume too much energy. The fourth one, Semi-Elementalization. This meant that he could turn part of his body into the Phoenix incarnation, and his body had gradually developed into the elemental incarnation of a magic shooter under the subtle influence of the Phoenix incarnation. However, without touching the magic net, he could only be semi-elementalization. The fifth one, Sublimation of Combat Energy. His dragon combat energy and the dragon's long-term training were at the high magic level. However, at this moment, after swallowing the essence of the Phoenix and training with the dragon, what was extracted from the cells was not the high magic level dragon combat energy, but the supreme magic level dragon combat energy. When he and Leo entered the Dragon Knight mode, their combat power directly soared several times. When the dragon combat energy was completely transformed into the supreme magic combat energy, his strength would probably be the strongest among all the Dragon Knight. Finally, there was also the sixth 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix. This was the reward of the smoke mission, and a Chi speculated that once List completely merged with the Phoenix incarnation, he would have the ability to command birds. The reason was simple. List gradually realized that he seemed to be able to understand the cries of birds. When he flew in his Phoenix form, those fire dragon birds and red sparrows would shiver in fear when they saw him. Occasionally they would let out one or two bird cries, as if they were expressing their submission and reverence to him. Even birds that were not of the fire element could vaguely sense the meaning of the bird's cry. Charlie can feel a special malice coming from Big Brother. This should be the unwillingness of the phoenix to be devoured. This malice is preventing Big Brother from communicating with the birds. Perhaps by drawing out this malice, we can preserve the phoenix's fire seed and allow it to grow again. Why would I want to communicate with birds? Liszt always felt that the all birds pay homage to the phoenix ability was very awkward. He was not a bird man, so he did not need to communicate with animals. Achi giggled. If Big Brother can really develop the all birds pay homage to the phoenix ability, wouldn't he be able to form the Flying Orders of Chivalry? The Burning Legion's Guards Orders of Chivalry can also be quickly dealt with. Those fire dragon birds and red sparrows are all excellent mounts. Liszt decisively changed the topic. What do I have to do to draw out the remaining malice of the phoenix? This involves the stripping of the soul. It just so happens that Achi has made great progress in her research on Lich Andi. She has already made sufficient preparations and can strip him from the scar of fear and the dragon's soul at any time. Once Achi has completed the stripping experiment, she can help Big Brother remove the malice of the phoenix and inject it into the phoenix egg. Let's do it as soon as possible. I can also feel that there is a barrier between me and the phoenix's incarnation. I'm still unable to merge with it. Perhaps it is this malice that repels me. December arrived. Liszt did not return to Firewood Castle for the past half a month. He only stayed in the endless volcanoes, researching the phoenix's incarnation. At the same time, he strengthened Leo's training and repeatedly cut away the malice that Leo had nurtured. He polished his own soul imprint more and more clearly, and the suppression on Leo became stronger and stronger. Based on this progress, in another 2 to 3 months, the soul imprint will be completed. My training with Leo will then reach the perfect Dragon Knight stage. At that time, even if he did not personally suppress it, the soul imprint would forcefully reverse Leo's malice. Just like that. He and Achi returned to Reed City together. Achi began to set up Lich Andi's soul stripping experiment, while he went to Firewood Castle to inspect the progress of the territory's construction. Reality proved that the development committee had done a good job. It was not that they could not do anything without his territory. As long as he could ensure that the dragon's high-end combat power was enough to suppress the Fire Kingdom, the Knight level would naturally be able to maintain the internal operations of the kingdom. After all, he did not reform the new system, nor did he upgrade the technology tree. Other than creating some white paper, glass products, strengthening the concept of hygiene and civilization, developing some infrastructure, magic projects, and formulating some reliable and unreliable strategies, he did not bring about too many changes. Everything was built on the foundation of the Knight system, and it was not abrupt at all. In this magical fantasy world, even if there were some changes that were out of the ordinary, it was not surprising. After all, the people here saw dragons, elves, unicorns, and magic shooters all day long. They grew up listening to all kinds of incredible and mysterious legends. Everyone's ability to accept things was very strong. However, in the face of this situation, Liszt actually felt a little disappointed, as if he had become an unimportant person. In the past, he often complained that he was so busy with work that he did not have time to breathe. When there was no work, he felt empty and lost. However, he quickly adjusted his mentality. This is good. My dream has never been to be a king. Traveling the world, experiencing countless mysterious sceneries, and exploring the origin of mysteries, this is what I should be doing. When the country is on the right track, I will go out and explore. There were many people living in Firewood Castle. All the members of the Tulip family had moved here. Lee William, Lady Penelope, Lady Marie, Loria, and little Richard had moved here. His brother Levis was in charge of the development of Dragon Valley City, and his half-brother Lytton had entered Orders of Chivalry for training. He did not live in Firewood Castle. His sister Elvira and the Basil family that she had married into had also moved to Flame Island, settling down in Jade City and participating in the construction. Because the center of the territory had been moved to Reed City, a new Tulip Castle was being built there for the convenience of work. When it was finished, Lee William would bring the members of the Tulip family to move into the new castle. There were many castles under construction, built by the great nobles for their own convenience. They could not live in wooden houses like ordinary knights. In fact, Liszt had already chosen a location for his royal city. Firewood City, Jade City, Reed City, Dragon Valley City, and Estuary City were all rejected. He had officially decided to build the royal city near the sacred mountain of the Moonslayers. Emily had been commanding the giant elephant orders of chivalry to build a road towards the sacred mountain of the Moonslayers. In 3 years to repair the royal city, the most important thing is to repair my palace. Please remember the domain name of this book. Godly Emperor of the Nine Heavens mobile version. Chapter 968. Emily, when the mammoth orders of chivalry arrive at the sacred mountain of the Moonkiller tribe, contact the local knight and magician who I sent to manage the sacred tribe. Ask the Moonkiller tribe to help the mammoth orders of chivalry build the city. List met with Countess Emily, who had returned to the castle to report. I've appointed Jemiah Rammed Earth as the chief commander of the city construction. He'll lead the construction team to choose a suitable location for the city and the palace near the sacred mountain. He'll finish the preliminary work first. As you wish, Your Highness. How's your relationship with Ethan going? I've made a lot of progress. Ethan really likes the bone-burning wine, so I'll start from there. I'll drink with him to win his favor. I've also found a fruit wine brewed by the Moonkiller tribe. After blending it, the taste of the bone wine has been improved, and it successfully replaced the original bone wine. So Ethan is no longer against you. When do you think you'll get the chance to fight the soul battle? List asked. Emily shook her head. Not yet, but Ethan has already relented. I believe the soul battle will come very soon. There's nothing special about Ethan's soul battle. You just have to face his heart and defeat him. I don't have much to teach you in this regard, because I destroyed the soul brand of the first Dragon Knight when Ethan was in a deep coma, List said. The young lady was full of confidence. Don't worry, Your Highness. Emily will definitely defeat Ethan's soul. I'm looking forward to this moment, List said with a smile. His handsome face coupled with his charming smile instantly struck Emily's heart, causing her heart to ripple unceasingly. Her face involuntarily turned crimson. Your Highness, your temperament has become somewhat different after returning from this trip. How so? Emily tried to find the right words to describe it. You seem to have become more domineering and aggressive. You can't look me in the eye as if you can see through me. This was the change brought about by the Phoenix incarnation. The Phoenix was not a gentle and pure creature like the unicorn. The Phoenix that was born from bathing in flames was a synonym for domineering and arrogant. This was a completely different image from the Phoenix on Earth, which represented good luck. It would be more appropriate to call a phoenix an immortal bird. List walked in front of the girl and looked into her eyes with a faint smile. Then what do you think I've seen through your heart? Emily wanted to avoid his burning gaze, but she quickly suppressed her shyness and looked straight into List's eyes. Emily doesn't have anything on her mind. I'm just willing to devote myself to Your Highness. It was very straightforward. However, the atmosphere here was very open. A knight could boldly pursue a young lady, and a young lady could boldly pursue a knight. Even married knight and noblewomen would often fool around outside, even in public. As long as both sides could accept it, it was normal for them to go their separate ways. Of course, this did not mean that fooling around was moral. It was just that human nature was complicated. There would always be people who abided by morality, and there would always be people who broke it. Emily's bold confession made List lose the joy of teasing the girl. He smiled a little awkwardly. You're still too young, Emily? The girl straightened her chest and said in a slightly hurried tone, Your Highness, I'm already 14 years old. After the new year I'll be 15 years old. Let's talk about it when you're an adult. Right now, focus on riding the dragon. I hope that when the Fire Kingdom is established, I won't be the only Dragon Knight in the kingdom. Feeling Emily's breath, he changed the topic. This year was Sapphire Calendar Year 155. 3 years later, which was Sapphire Calendar Year 158, the Fire Kingdom would be established. At that time he would be 23 years old and Emily would be 17 years old, an adult. Achi would be 47 years old, still a long way from adulthood. It was hard to calculate when a siren would become an adult. When he first met an old siren called Izzy, she was already more than 400 years old. She was born from a conch shell. She grew her legs at the age of 55 and officially became an adult. Achi was born from a scallop shell. It was hard to say whether she would become an adult at the age of 55 like Izzy. Moreover, after becoming a magic shooter and obtaining elemental incarnation, Achi had already grown her legs. It was not impossible to say that she had long become an adult. Facing List's change of topic, the girl Emily's eyes showed a hint of disappointment, but she quickly adjusted. I'll grow up quickly, Your Highness. This hint of disappointment was still caught by List. He suddenly reached out his hand, lifted Emily's chin and said gently, "Grow up quickly." In an instant, Emily felt an electric current hit her body, giving her great excitement. Her chin unconsciously rubbed against List's fingertips, and she nodded heavily. Yes. The Phoenix incarnation was one of List's trump cards. He did not reveal it to anyone except Chi. He still chose to travel around on the invisible dragon Bard. After seeing off the excited Emily, he went to the Reed Tower in Reed City to check on the progress of Chi's experiment. "Your Highness, you're here." The twins, Lucy and Lucy, were like the two little butlers of the Reed Tower. They learned from the High Mage and made rapid progress. They were no longer magic apprentices. Just 2 months ago, the younger sister Ruth had released an ordinary water magic, water arrow volley, and became a real magician. A month ago, the older sister Lucy had also successfully released an ordinary fire magic, big fireball, and became a qualified magician. And they were only 13 years old. 3 years ago, around the same time as Emily, they were sent to the Magic Academy by List and recommended to Chris as apprentices. 3 years later, both of them had become mages, enough to be crowned with the title of Genius Mage. According to the cultivation system of mages, apprentices usually started at the age of 10 to 15. The twins were chosen by List at the age of 10. After 5 years of study, apprentices who could become mages before the age of 20 were all geniuses. With their insight and understanding of magic, they had the chance to become archmages. For the twins to become mages in 3 years, it was almost certain that they would become archmages. "Hello, Lucy, Ruth." List greeted the twins kindly, but in his heart, he wondered if the twins would have the chance to become magic shooters after many years. After all, they were magic geniuses named by the Smoke Mission. Maybe they really had the chance. They watched as List entered the laboratory. The younger sister Ruth immediately put on a look of infatuation. "Your Highness is so handsome, like a blazing flame." Standing in front of His Highness, "I am so nervous that I can't breathe." The elder sister Lucy looked at her sister helplessly. "His Highness is the future king. Don't always think nonsense, okay?" "What's wrong with that? Why do you care what I think?" Devotion to the truth is what a mage should do." "Sister, you are so stupid. His Highness doesn't like mages. His Highness likes arcanists. In the future we will all become arcanists." "No, I want to become an arcana tutor, a powerful arcana tutor like Teacher Chi." Ruth held her head high, a few small freckles on her face as proud as her expression. Lucy did not speak. She picked up a magic book and read it carefully. The cover of the book read, "Grand Arcanists, Issue 13, published by the Arcana Assessment Board." The cover was an old great mage wearing a magic cloak. Although it was a drawing, it looked like a real person. Next to it was a line of eye-catching serpentines. "Inventor of the magic bicycle, leader of the power research group, Gundolf Truth." Chapter 969. The Great Arcanist was undoubtedly the brainchild of List. He felt that the lack of magazines and newspapers in this world was a bit of an entertainment shortage. But there was no point in publishing a newspaper, because he didn't need to read it to know everything that was happening in his territory. With the repeated improvements of the Magic Platform by the Guild of Magic, it had now entered the era of Magic Platform 5.0. It was miniaturized, standardized, confidential, and simple. He could receive news from all over the territory at any time, and then there was a special squire to sort out the messages and send them to his desk. Therefore, there was no newspaper, but there was internal information which was basically used for internal circulation of officials and nobles. But with the increasing popularity of the white paper, the territory's publishing industry began to flourish. Coupled with the conscious reform of the mage system, he signaled the Guild of Magic to publish The Great Arcanist, a periodical that focused on academics, so that the mages in the territory could set out for glory and make more inventions. Lucy didn't miss any issue of The Great Arcanist. She hoped that one day she could also be on the cover of this periodical. She was reading about Gundolf Truth. This great mage, Gundolf, came from the Kingdom of Eagle's vassal state, the Principality of Chrysoberyl. When he came, he didn't come alone, but with 11 mage apprentices and a large number of magic apprentices. Unlike the usual mages who were selfish and eccentric, Gundolf liked to teach magic. After learning that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had given birth to an archmage, Gundolf took his disciples on a pilgrimage to Sapphire. After visiting the Guild of Magic, he immediately decided to stay here and join the guild. He was now a member of the Arcanist Assessment Board, and with the invention of the magic two-wheeled bicycle, he was promoted from an ordinary arcanist to an arcanist master, becoming the 6th Arcanist Master of the Guild of Magic. I have a strong interest in dynamics and have been engaged in research in this area for many years. After coming to His Highness's territory, I found the wheelbarrow and couldn't help but be amazed by His Highness's invention. Compared with the carriage, the wheelbarrow can be said to be beneficial to the country and the people. Gandalf said in an interview with the editor of The Great Arcanist. Since then he had a soft spot for the wheelbarrow and decided to improve it into a more convenient vehicle. One day when he was collecting information in the plantation, he saw a serf pushing a broken wheelbarrow. The wheelbarrow had almost only one wheel left. Therefore, when the serfs pushed the wheelbarrow, they could put their bodies on the handlebars and let the wheelbarrow run by itself. This quickly gave Gandalf an idea. Since a wheelbarrow can be pushed by hand, why not make a wheelbarrow that can be pushed by foot? But pushing a wheelbarrow with one's feet was easier said than done. However, the glory of List shines on every arcanist who is willing to think. When Gandalf saw the wheels the serfs used to fetch water from the well, he was suddenly inspired. So he invented a wheelbarrow that could be stepped on, but he soon discovered that the wheelbarrow was not easy to balance. So he added a wheel. It became a two-wheeled vehicle, also known as a bicycle. Unlike the bicycle on Earth, the front wheel of this bicycle was very large, and the pedals were directly connected to the wheel. The rear wheel was very small and was only used for stability. Then Gandalf went on to set up a magic array for the bicycle so that it can run on its own. And so the magic two-wheeled bicycle was born. What a great invention. I hope I can also invent an invention like the magic two-wheeled bicycle. Lucy said enviously after reading the report. Lucy, who was mopping the floor, did not even raise her head and said contemptuously, "What's so great about that? Wait until the day I develop a bicycle that can fly in the sky, then that's called great." Brother, you're here. Yes. Achi has just finished the experiment of stripping Lich Andy's soul. Several great sorcerers are now dealing with the trivial matters of Lich Andy. Achi pointed to the glass compartment of the laboratory, where several great sorcerers were busy collecting data and information. Among them was the vice president of the Guild of Magic, Kenley. Unlike Crazy, who mainly focused on administration, Kenley was very addicted to magic experiments and often came to Achi's lab to help out and gain experience. The trivial matters were quickly completed. Lich Andy was pushed out of the glass compartment, and the great sorcerers also saluted to List, "Your Highness." No need to be so polite. List walked to the stretcher and looked at the old, shriveled, humanoid creature that looked almost like Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, lying on the stretcher. He asked, "This is Lich Andy?" After being stripped of the scar of fear and the dragon soul, Lich Andy has returned to his human form. However, his body is on the verge of collapse because of the erosion of the soul power. He won't live for more than a few days. Achi explained and pointed to the transparent jar in the hands of another great sorcerer. The dragon soul of the sapphire dragon is seriously polluted and needs to be purified for a period of time. The jar was a kind of soul container made by Achi. The container was filled with a special liquid, and a dark blue transparent sapphire dragon shadow was swimming in the liquid. This is the dragon soul? Yes, there's also the scar of fear over there. The scar of fear was an armor, a magical armor. Unlike ordinary armor, although the surface of this armor was silvery white, the inside was made of a material as black as ink. It was similar to the material of the sapphire dragon bow that List removed from the ghost ship. A great sorcerer recognized this material, obsidian, a kind of gemstone associated with old dragons. It's very rare, but I don't know what its function is. A dragon over 800 years old was an old dragon. At this time, the dragon would leave its place of residence and fly to the legendary Valley of the Dragon. No one could follow the old dragon and find the Valley of the Dragon. Some even speculated that the Valley of the Dragon did not exist, and the old dragon just didn't want to die in front of humans. Obsidian. List picked up the scar of fear and felt cold in his hand. It was not a physical coldness, but a coldness that penetrated deep into the soul. It doesn't seem to be a stone but more like metal? Obsidian is like metal and crystal. It's very strange. So what is the use of this armor besides transforming into a lich? Let's use the ancient book of knowledge to identify it. Achi had just stripped off the scar of fear and hadn't had time to study it. She took out the ancient book of knowledge and soon with a ray of light, a few words of the moon appeared in the book. Obsidian, mithril, elven blood, isolation banishing fog. The materials were clear, but the function introduced at the end, isolation banishing fog, was somewhat unclear. Achi quickly guessed, could it be some kind of fog used by the Lich to isolate the land of exile? According to the existing information about the land of exile, this is the border between reality and illusion. Once the soul enters, it will sink. It is likely that the scar of fear can rely on banishing the fog to keep the soul awake. It's possible. It's a good artifact. I have to put it away. Lich Andy's soul-stripping experiment was completed. Andy, who was like a grunt, was taken by the great sorcerers for related soul research. The dragon soul of the sapphire dragon needed to be purified, and it was also an excellent research material. It was left in Achi's laboratory. There was no hurry to treat the sapphire dragon. After all, Grand Duke Andrew was not dead yet. At this moment, Achi had accumulated enough experience to help List remove the remaining malice of the phoenix. Chapter 970. With a tremble of his soul, List, with Achi's help, had successfully extracted the remaining malice of the phoenix from his soul and injected it into the petrified phoenix egg through the magic array. At the same time, a trace of List's consciousness was also extracted. This consciousness, similar to a spiritual imprint, was mixed into the phoenix egg and played a guiding role for the phoenix that would be born from the egg in the future. The intention of this spiritual imprint was very simple. It was to constantly hint to the Flame family. It was to pave the way for his descendants to subdue the phoenix in the future. He felt that he probably wouldn't be able to see the birth of a new phoenix. Brother, the phoenix egg already has a breath of life. As long as it is placed back in its original place and incubated, perhaps after many years, a new phoenix will be reborn from the fire. Achi said. Also, according to Brother's description, Achi designed a simple magic array for the nest of the phoenix to incubate. This can help the phoenix bloodstone to more efficiently gather the fire attribute magic. Perhaps it will be of great help to the birth of the phoenix. That's good. Extracting some of the soul that contained the consciousness did not have many adverse effects on List, nor did he feel exhausted. The soul here was the condensation of spiritual power. However, the soul seemed to be a non-renewable resource unless a new life was born. For example, a bird egg was a lifeless mass of liquid that eventually grew a soul and became a living creature. Pregnancy was the same. Two cells fused and finally grew into a mass of flesh that slowly gave birth to a soul. The so-called rebirth from the fire of the phoenix did not seem to be true immortality. Instead, after the soul withered, the body was reborn. It felt like asexual reproduction. From List's perspective, the soul that carried memories was a person's true personality. The body was just a shell. Of course, it was hard to say if the phoenix could remember its previous life once it was born. After all, this phoenix was swallowed by List before it could be reborn. After resting for a day and confirming that there were no negative effects, he quickly rode the invisible dragon Bard, crossed 2 natural nodes, and arrived at the volcano of Doomsday. He then turned into a phoenix and plunged into the half-dormant volcano. A lot of the magma had fallen, but it was still red and tumbling. He could travel through it in the form of magic. So he quickly entered the original cave, put the dry wood and the phoenix egg in place, and then began to repair the cracks in the cave, and set up the magic array that Achi had prepared. I don't know if I can keep the phoenix fire seed if I do this. He summoned the smoke mission and found that the mission had not changed. It was still in an incomplete state. Dispersing the smoke, he began to frown. He had done everything he could and discussed many plans with Achi. Only this plan of stripping the soul had a glimmer of hope. Who would have thought that even though he had tried so hard, he still could not complete the mission. The phoenix seemed to have died forever. Something's wrong. If the phoenix is really dead, the smoke mission will definitely fail, but now it's just an incomplete state. There must be a way. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but look at the entire cave and the phoenix egg again. Then is there any other way to keep the phoenix's fire seed? Fire seed. Fire seed. He looked at the pile of firewood under the phoenix egg. Through the appraisal of the ancient book of knowledge, this branch was a parasol tree. However, it looked a little different from the branches of the phoenix parasol tree, but its nature was similar. They were both fire elemental trees and they were not afraid of fire. Before, the parasol tree branch was in a burning state, although it was only an illusion of fire elemental magic. Does this mean that there are not enough parasol tree branches? Legend has it that the phoenix only lived on the parasol tree, and it would not land unless it was a parasol tree. When he thought of this, he did not hesitate and directly left the volcano of Doomsday, went to the phoenix parasol tree forest, and picked a group of strong phoenix parasol trees to cut down. Then he dragged the parasol tree branches and quickly returned to the cave, piling all the branches under the phoenix egg. He felt that the fire elemental aura in the cave was obviously much stronger. He turned into the phoenix again and fiercely fanned the fire a few times, increasing the fire elemental magic in the cave to a very high degree. At this time, the pile of firewood that had not changed finally turned into flames, and began to roast the phoenix egg. Is it done? List's heart moved and he summoned the smoke mission. This time, the illusory smoke finally changed, and it was a good change that he had hoped to see. Mission completed. Reward: birds pay homage to the phoenix. Not bad, I finally kept the fire of the phoenix. He breathed a sigh of relief, and at this time, a new smoke mission was issued. Mission: the territory has built countless schools. Although they are basically in a state of chaos, basic education is slowly unfolding. As the snow on Black Horse Island is about to arrive, it is time for the schools to conclude. Why not select the first batch of outstanding students to receive better education? Reward: Dark Ring. Selecting outstanding students? This mission is simple. Just take an exam. The civilian-oriented students will take a written exam, and the knight-oriented students will compete. It is best to build a regular system of examination system. When I go back, I will let the development committee prepare. I really need to train some outstanding talents to lay the foundation for my future Burning Legion. He did not pay attention to the Dark Ring reward. He could not see any useful clues from this reward. Glancing around the phoenix nest that was already on the right track, he did not delay any more, and directly turned into a phoenix and left the volcano of Doomsday. Standing on the solidified magma rock at the crater, he pulled out the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, stimulated the dragon's Do-Chi that had gradually turned into a supreme magic, and slashed a few times. A few huge cracks suddenly appeared in the crater. However, List did not stop at all and continued to slash. These cracks gradually formed a few rough serpentines. This mountain is sealed. Idler stop. List flame. The volcano of Doomsday was officially sealed. Admiring his calligraphy masterpiece, he felt that these serpentines were vigorous and powerful, imposing, and very interesting. He thought again, I will let a Chi come here another day to set up a magic array and completely seal the crater to prevent anything from accidentally entering and disturbing the incubation of the phoenix egg. In fact, there was no need to do these fancy actions. Except for him and Leo, basically no human or animal could go thousands of meters deep into the magma and find the phoenix nest. It was better than nothing. Let's go. Without any more tricks, he directly turned into a flaming phoenix and went straight to the sky. At this moment, his mental state had never been so carefree. Since stripping away the remaining malice of the phoenix and solving the breeding of the phoenix fire seed, he was completely relaxed. Information from the phoenix's bloodline quickly integrated into his soul. It was information about the phoenix's domination of all birds. All birds pay homage to the phoenix. Receiving this information, he turned his gaze to the phoenix nest of the phoenix parasol tree forest not far away, where the flame dragonbird and red sparrow lived. Chapter 971. Caw. The phoenix incarnation let out a cry, and all the flaming dragon birds and cardinal birds that lived in the phoenix tree forest gathered around List, as if they were protecting a king. Compared to the previous flock, the flock was even bigger now because another group of fire elemental birds were attracted by the phoenix forest and settled here. Among them there were 15 new species of birds. They also had fire red feathers, but they were bigger, stronger than the fire drakes and taller than the cardinals. Also, they had a strong fire elemental aura which had reached the standard of Super Warcraft. However, they didn't have the aura of a dragon, so they weren't dragons. Caw. Caw. These new species of Super Warcraft had crow-like cries, and they also looked like crows. Seeing this, List named them Fire Ravens. Whether it was the Super Dragon Beast, the Flame Dragon Bird, the Super Magical Beast, the Fire Crow, or the high-level Magical Beast, the Red Sparrow, their cries all had a specific meaning. In the past, List had been unable to understand it, but now that he had obtained information from the Phoenix bloodline, he was gradually beginning to understand their cries. They were worshipping List's Phoenix. Caw. List let out another strange, domineering cry. However, the Phoenix didn't seem to have a language, so he didn't know what he was calling. However, as these birds circled around him, he gradually felt a strange connection between him and these birds. It was like a simplified elven contract. With a thought, he could communicate his thoughts to the birds that worshipped him. This was the true meaning of all birds worshipping the Phoenix. Therefore, after familiarizing himself with this ability, he quickly gathered the disorderly flock of birds according to his thoughts. 5 flaming dragon birds took the lead, while 15 flaming ravens followed closely behind. 341 cardinal birds lined up in a row behind the Phoenix transformation, circling around the Phoenix tree forest. Soon Goldie, Little Red and Little Purple, the three flaming dragon birds, joined in. Among them, Goldie was carrying the Phoenix Forest's great elf, Ainfant. List Phoenix. Ainfant sat on Goldie's back and pointed at List's Phoenix and laughed. It was very interesting. Screech. Goldie, Little Red and Little Purple also worshipped the Phoenix's incarnation, and List also obtained a simple contract to drive them. In other words, List had tamed so many super dragons, Super World Warcraft, and Advanced World of Warcraft without any effort at all. With a thought, he quickly returned to his human body. The supreme demons that belonged to the Phoenix quickly retracted into the depths of his cells. However, there was still a portion of the Phoenix supreme magic that remained in his meridians, continuously refining his dragon chi, allowing him to reach the powerful strength of a magic shooter even without riding a dragon. Magic shooters relied on the magic net to stimulate their powerful strength, while his strength came directly from himself. Of course, the consumption was also huge. The amount of potions needed every day was 5 times more than before. When the dragon's fighting energy completely ascended to supreme magic level, the consumption would probably be more than 10 times. There were gains and losses, and supreme magic shooters could not be created directly. After he returned to his human body, the flock of birds that had been lined up neatly quickly stopped. They looked at List with countless doubts in their eyes. Because after List returned to his human body, the contract of the Phoenix quickly disappeared, and he could no longer control the flock of birds. Very soon, the flock of birds scattered and found their own places to wander, no longer paying attention to List. However, they did not show any hostility towards List. Even when List approached a linnet that had landed and was foraging for food, this linnet that was bigger than a calf did not react at all. Even when List reached out to touch its feathers, it only dodged 2 steps to the side. Then List continued to touch it and it dodged twice before not dodging anymore. It was only when List flipped over and rode it that it became a little angry and wanted to shake List off. After a few failures, it accepted its fate. As List continued to drive it, it seemed to understand the meaning behind it and flew directly into the sky. After circling around for a while, List steered the cardinal to land again. Not bad. Although the Phoenix reverence of all birds was disconnected due to the withdrawal of the Phoenix incarnation, I now have the ability to blend into the flock of birds. It feels strange, but the ability is very practical. The conditions to form the flight orders of chivalry have been met. I remember that there are a few fire element sky knights in the territory. I can give them to linnets as rewards. The fire dragon birds and fire ravens belong to the future orders of chivalry and could not be given out at will. However, it did not matter to linnets. There were a total of 341 of them. Moreover, my Phoenix incarnation ability might not only be used against fire element birds. Let me find some non-fire element birds and experiment with World of Warcraft. He did what he thought of. List bid farewell to Ainfant and indicated to the invisible dragon bard to stroll around on his own. He then transformed into a phoenix and flew into the distance. Soon they found a few bird-type magical beasts in a forest. They were all low-level magical beasts. These low-level World of Warcraft birds trembled in fear when they saw the phoenix. Chapter 972. It was snowing on Black Horse Island and winter was coming. Unlike the previous winter, when there was still a big battle atmosphere, Black Horse Island was now gradually depopulated. A large number of plantations were abandoned, and several small towns were almost uninhabited. Many workshops had also disappeared, leaving only a few places that still had a lively scene. One was the kelp town near the sea, which was an important magic potion production site. Many knight and serfs lived in the kelp forest. The other was Kelp City, a seaport city on Black Horse Island that was open to the outside world. Near Kelp City was Thorn Castle. Thomas, as usual, took the keys to each room and patrolled all the rooms up and down the castle. He patrolled all the way to the castle's study. Several young servants were cleaning the study, and when they saw Thomas, they greeted him, "Mr. Thomas." Thomas, with his meticulously combed hair and the same serious expression, just nodded lightly and personally joined in the work of arranging the books. "Master's most precious books are on the shelf. You must be careful when cleaning. Master said that knowledge is the most precious wealth." After teaching the young servants a few words, he also tidied up the books on the shelf. Then he pushed open the balcony door of the study and came to the snow-covered balcony, from which he could see Needlegrass Hill behind the castle. He looked at the hillside and the familiar huge body had disappeared, which made him feel very lost. Master has ridden the grey-mouthed iron dragon Orn to Flame Island, and the elves have been sent to Firewood Castle. Now Black Horse Island and Thorn Castle have become very quiet. What he once hoped for the most was to become the butler of Thorn Castle. Now that his wish was fulfilled, he was not as proud as he imagined. Because the butler of Thorn Castle was now only in charge of a few servants. The servants he was familiar with, Butler Carter, Mrs. Morrison, Mrs. Abby, the sexy little Lily, Irene who liked the kitchen, the stupid Tom and the silly Jessie, all went to Firewood Castle and continued to follow his master. As for him, he, the former master's valet, was left behind in Thorn Castle. However, Thomas did not have much jealousy in his heart, because he had not been liked by List from the beginning. The young master did not like to be served by a manservant. Moreover, as List spent more time away from home than in the castle, his position as a valet only existed in name. Now that he had become the butler of Bramble Castle, he was more than satisfied. As a serving man, his greatest goal in life was to become a butler. As long as old Carter did not die, he would not be able to covet the position of chief butler of Firewood Castle and even the future royal palace. It's snowing again and the new year is almost here. I wonder how Master is going to celebrate the new year in Firewood Castle. He shook his head and returned to the study. He closed the door carefully and continued to inspect the next room with the key in his hand. Compared to the desolate Thorn Castle, Firewood Castle was bustling. The servants were busy, and the elves were playing and quarreling in the castle. In the past few days the noise had reached its peak. There was no other reason. The Thorn Plantation had been built near Firewood City. Ella and her worm stalks had been moved here and lived in Firewood Castle. At this moment, Ella had her hands on her waist and pointed at a naughty elf. "Wow, you bastard elf, you dare to throw jade powder? You're asking for a beating. Calabash elf, don't be afraid of it. If it dares to hit you, I will hit it." The one who spoke was the man-eating tree dragon elf, Carly. She was wearing a flack and holding a knife and fork as she tasted a fruit salad. "Ella, you can teach the Calabash elf a lesson. I support you." Sitting at the same table with Carly was the buckwheat elf, Yachty, who had the intention to provoke a fight between Ella and Carly. Because of Ella's bad temper, she did not like this elf very much. As for Carly, she did not like the elf at all. Ella turned the muzzle and yelled at the two dragon elves, "Shut up. I'm educating the elf, it's none of your business." "Wah." "Ee." Carly sneered. "Ee." Yachty smiled gently. "List, they're quarreling again." A big elf with a strange flower on his head quietly climbed to the shoulder of List, who was reading a book, and told him. List put down the book in his hand and smiled at the big elf. "I know Carl." Carl, the giant konjac elf, was one of the elves List who was familiar with the Bird King's ability. When he passed by the Holy Tribe on his way back, the Holy Tribe's listener Sue offered him a gift. With the help of the knight and magician sent by List, Sue subdued many Moonslayer tribes in one fell swoop and collected many elves. The only big sprite was the giant konjac big sprite that he named Carl. Giant konjac was a plant unique to Flame Island. It was known as corpse flower by the Moonslayer. List disliked corpse flower and forcibly changed it to giant konjac. In fact, he also wanted to change the name of the cannibal tree, but Carly liked the name cannibal tree and was unwilling to change it. There were magic ingredients in the giant konjac, so Carl was very valuable. It had an interesting personality and liked to snitch. Of course, from another perspective, it was called loyalty. Therefore List liked Carl very much. He always felt that Carl was also an unusual elf. Basically, he liked elves with strange personalities and felt that they were full of vitality. Those with dull personalities always felt that they were not energetic enough. But in the Guild of Magic's research, there was no clear link between personality and the evolution of elves. "Aren't you going to stop them?" Carl asked curiously. "It's okay. They're still in the breaking stage. I believe they will like each other soon." "I don't think so." While they were chatting, the butler Carter knocked on the door and came in. "Master, the Marquis is back." "Oh, I'll go over and have a chat with Father." List gestured for Carl to play at the side. He walked over and knocked on Carly and Yachty's table. "Don't fan the flames, you two. Be united. Don't worry, List. With me around, there won't be any chaos," Carly said with her head held high. Yachty pursed her lips and did not say a word. When they came to the living room, Marquis Oxtail had just changed into his home clothes. The father and son talked about government affairs in the living room. The main thing was that List was more concerned about the territory's college entrance examination that had just ended. Marquis Oxtail took out a document. "Just summarize the data. The schools in every town have completed the assessment. This is the list of outstanding students recommended by each school. List took it and casually flipped through a few pages. He did not see too many outstanding young students. He had each school specifically indicate the age and training time of the students. Any student who could become an Earth Knight within 3 years was a genius worth nurturing. I don't see a single talented student. There are still quite a few. Look at the schools in Fireforge City. There are already 14-year-old Earth Knights and there's more than one. These 2 students are definitely geniuses. Lee William took out a list and pointed at a student named Durotan Red Apricot and a student named Custer Fengche. Still not talented enough. I have an impression of these 2 students. Durotan is Earl Durotan's son, while Custer is Viscount Delier's son. Durotan Red Apricot was a veteran sword saint Earl. Delier Fengche was a Sky Knight Viscount. Their sons had been nurtured from a young age. They advanced to an Earth Knight at the age of 14. Their talent was similar to List's brothers, Levis and Lytton. There was hope for a Sky Knight, but it was nearly impossible for a Dragon Knight. They're already outstanding enough, List. You can't expect everyone to be as talented as you and Emily, Lee Williams said, speechless. Even Yevich, who was selected for the Eagle Kingdom's Dragon Knight candidate program, was only a 13-year-old Earth Knight. Then I'll leave the arrangements for them to you, Father. Quickly establish the royal school and nurture them. When there are seedlings for the Dragon Knight candidate program, I'll pay attention to them. To List, only the Dragon Knight was worthy of his attention. He could nurture them into the foundation of the Fire Kingdom. Sky Knights were just a bunch of higher-level production materials. However, with the arrival of this list, the smoke mission was completed. Mission completed. Reward, Black Ring. Chapter 973. A Black Ring. List quickly found out the origin of this reward, the statue of the ancient archmage who killed the Moonmen. The Black Ring was found in a native tribe that was conquered by the Holy Tribe. It was worn by the tribe's listener and was the symbol of the tribe's authority. Emily, who was commanding the giant elephant orders of chivalry to level the terrain, brought the Black Ring back to Firewood Castle. List did not immediately check the attributes of the ring after receiving it. Instead, he said to Emily, "The giant elephant orders of chivalry will be handed over to my assistant for now. After you finish your training with Ethan, come to Firewood Castle for this year's New Year." Emily's eyes lit up and she quickly nodded. "Yes, Emily, thanks Your Highness for the invitation." To be able to spend the New Year's with Her Highness at Firewood Castle was a very meaningful occasion for her. Emily happily rode on the Chocobo Loki and left Firewood Castle for Jade City to train. List summoned the smoke mission and looked at the new mission. Mission. In the blink of an eye, you are about to welcome your 5th New Year's Day in this world. As you grow older, your strength increases, and your identity changes, causing your mentality to change. You are no longer the poor little baron who hid in the countryside to entertain himself. However, life still needs to move forward. Please wait for the New Year's Day to end. Reward, unknown reward. The long-delayed unknown reward mission appeared once again. To List, this was like relaxing. He did not need to worry about the smoke mission. He only needed to wait for the New Year's Day to receive the reward. The weather on Blazing Island in December was dry and cold. Although it was not below zero, everything stopped growing. In the past, the Moonmen were like World of Warcraft, hiding in their nests and waiting for the next spring to revive. However, with the arrival of the firemen, Blazing Island had completely changed. The long and dry winter was a good time for construction. Countless serfs worked hard. Felling trees, leveling the land, reclaiming wastelands, building ditches, building workshops, building wooden houses. After List trained his dragon's chi once, he rode on the invisible dragon Bard and entered the material boundary. He was prepared to patrol his territory in the last few days of Sapphire Calendar Year 155. First was the Infernal Realm. This was the first city on Blazing Island, which was positioned as a big agricultural city. Its development speed had fallen behind the other cities, but it had the largest population. Forests could no longer be seen around the city. Almost all the trees had been cut down, and everything else had been transformed into plantations. Due to the large amount of water flowing out of the Whirlpool Cave, the water storage capacity of the Whirlpool River was abundant. Mages from the Guild of Magic who studied water conservancy had instructed the serfs to build an irrigation network in the vicinity of Fireforge City. The canals were connected in all directions, irrigating nearly 5 million acres of land. As far as the eye could see, there were white ribbons of water, enveloping patches of oasis. To this day, the irrigation network known as the Tinder Whirlpool Irrigation Area was still being excavated. This world was probably nourished by magic. The physical qualities of humans were much better than those of humans on Earth. They had more strength, fewer illnesses, and were less likely to die. The Moonkiller serfs who lived in the forest for a long time had better physical fitness than the Flame People civilians. There was also a team of trainee knights who were in charge of excavating rocks from the mountains, and an expert team of ancient mages who were in charge of transforming the most difficult terrain. This made the infrastructure construction very smooth. Even without mechanical equipment such as excavators and bulldozers, the efficiency was no less than China's infrastructure speed on Earth. This made List very satisfied. Under his influence, the Fire Kingdom now had the temperament of an infrastructure maniac. We still need to upgrade. The roads in the Tinder Whirlpool irrigation area are not good enough. Most of them are dirt roads. The drought in winter is nothing, but when it rains in summer, it will become a disaster. This is not good. List took out a notebook and simply recorded his thoughts. We need to upgrade all these roads to cement roads as soon as possible. Unfortunately, there is no asphalt. Compared with hard cement roads, List actually preferred the asphalt road. Unfortunately, this world had never heard of coal, oil, and other resources, so naturally there was no asphalt as a byproduct. But it's very difficult to build a cement road in a short period of time. The cement renovation of several roads may consume most of the current cement workshop's output. The gravel road is not bad. A shovel-toothed elephant can trample out a few kilometers of country roads in a day. It's enough to pave gravel. After recording the road problems, he recorded the problems of the plantation. There were many problems with the plantation, mainly that some plants were not suitable for the climate of Flame Island. Once they left the influence of the cordyceps, they could not even survive. However, overall, the land of Flame Island was much more fertile than that of Black Horse Island. In addition, the Guild of Magic was developing various fertilizers, and the yield of crops per moo increased year by year. Rubber trees need to be planted in large quantities, potatoes need to be planted in large quantities, corn needs to be planted in large quantities. After the inspection of Tinder City, he immediately flew along Longshin Avenue to Dragon Valley City. Dragon Valley City was a major mining city. The 5 major mining areas of black iron, bronze, mercury, galena, and titanium mines were all high-quality and high-yield mining resources. In general, mining cities, pollution was very serious, but Dragon Valley City was much cleaner. The reason was very simple. All the iron-making workshops, copper-making workshops, mercury-making workshops, lead-making workshops, and titanium-making workshops all used Fire Dragon converters. With Leo's Fire Dragon Super Magic as the power source, no chemical dyes were needed. The furnace temperature was stable and the efficiency was high. However, the construction capital of the Fire Dragon converter was not cheap. For these Fire Dragon Supreme Magic, List did not know how much magic potions he had given Leo. The workshop is still too rough and not delicate enough. Next time, I have to remind the development committee to set up professional factories such as steel bars and wire mills as soon as possible. And now there is no shortage of metal. The Guild of Magic also needs to hurry up and develop steam engines. I want to build aircraft carriers in the future. Oh. List fantasized in his notebook. It should be called the Wyvern Mothership, as a place for my dragons to stay when crossing the Devil's Sea. But it seems that a Chi can make a lot of hard ice. When I'm with a Chi, I can take as many dragons as I want. Leaving Dragon Valley City, he continued his inspection of the next stop, Jade City, which was not clearly located. The city was backed by Jade Mountain and was currently used for mining jade veins. However, there were also plans to build an irrigation area here and open up new plantations in the future. The cities under the Night System were mainly agricultural. The construction of Jade City was slow, so List did not urge him. He rode the invisible dragon Bard all the way south to Estuary City. Estuary City was a major port city responsible for trade with Tulip Island. However, the development of Tulip Island had been delayed, so Estuary City could not play its role immediately. Now the city was targeted for coastal development, to find suitable shallow waters for breeding black giant clams, pink conchas, golden-lipped clams as well as giant algae and kelp in the future. He also wanted to cultivate mangroves in the swamps of the estuary and expand the breeding of green caterpillars, mallards and flamingos. List, who had the Awe of the Phoenix ability, was the king of birds. In the future he would search for more birds that could be bred in World of Warcraft. Compared to hunting World of Warcraft to provide World of Warcraft meat, breeding World of Warcraft was more cost-effective, and this kind of breeding was sustainable. It's been a long time since I've gone down to the sea to search for sea elves and resource-type sea monsters. I'm probably like most native nobles now, setting my sights on the endless resources of the continent. I'd rather wage war and plunder than go fishing in the sea. He did not change the world, but the world had changed him. Fortunately, Liszt always had a vision that surpassed this era and this world. Conquering the sea is also part of my plan. The Devil's Sea can't stop me. After inspecting Estuary City, he directly traveled through space to Reed City. Reed City was a major trade city because the Hart-Reed teleportation circle was located here. Before the new teleportation circle was opened, Reed City would be the only channel of communication between Flame Island and the outside world. That was why the development of Reed City was at the speed of building a few buildings in a single night. There were too many people in the city, and to avoid crowding, Liszt's request was to build tall buildings with 6 floors. The invention of cement, the use of steel, and the production of bricks all made it possible to build high-rise buildings at a low cost. Just as he was about to find some flaws in the development of Reed City, the ground in the distance suddenly rumbled as if there was an earthquake. He turned to look and saw a small mountain that blocked traffic. It was as if a great force was slowly pushing it back into the ground, and the ground soon became flat. Oh, it's a chi. She's mastered the Earth incarnation perfectly. Chapter 974. He flew over on his dragon. Sure enough, a chi was riding Charlie the unicorn, casting spells with the 8-dragon sword in one hand. With Charlie's enhancement of her high magic power to the level of supreme magic, she could now release all kinds of magic at will without the need to follow a certain esoteric meaning. Brother, a chi has already mastered the Earth elemental incarnation. It's very easy to transform the mountains and rivers. If there's any terrain that needs to be transformed on the blazing island, just leave it to a chi. After seeing Liszt, a chi said with a smile. She was a little tired from researching magic, especially the soul. She wanted to find another way to relax. I see. Let the Guild of Magic study the terrain of the blazing island and see how to transform it. But there are 2 places that we can try to transform first. Fire City and Jade City are mainly plantations. I'll leave the leveling of the land to you. By the way, are you sure the terrain that has been transformed by magic is suitable for planting? Liszt thought of a problem. Achi was stunned for a moment. Then she rode on Charlie and landed on the hill that she had slapped into the ground. After a few tests with magic, she said with some annoyance, "Brother, it doesn't seem to work. Earth magic has the effect of hardening the soil. The ground that I've transformed is too hard." Not only was it hard, but it even showed signs of petrification. Basically, it could no longer be cultivated. Then don't be in a hurry to transform the farmland. Your Earth elemental incarnation is most suitable for building roads, canals, and cities. Brother, do you want a chi to build a sky canal from the entrance of the whirlpool to the river? A chi did not forget her previous idea. She had always wanted to restore the wonder built by the ancient magic shooters, the sky canal. Forget it. The Great Whirlpool Teleportation Formation is basically abandoned. There's no point in developing the Whirlpool Islands. If I have time, I think we can close the Great Whirlpool Teleportation Formation and use the natural node at the entrance of the whirlpool. It's also time to open the second teleportation formation. Where does brother intend to open the second teleportation formation? To Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. Liszt narrowed his eyes and thought of a new natural node discovered 2 days ago. He had originally planned to send some supplies to Yevich Peanut so that he could continue to attack the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. However, he had accidentally discovered a natural node located at the border between the Yellowstone Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom on the legendary continent. It was less than 100 kilometers away from the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. It was a dense forest. It looked ordinary, but Liszt suspected that there was a mine buried underneath. Basically, the natural nodes were related to the supreme magic, which meant that they were related to the dragons. I plan to use this new teleportation portal to connect the Jade City and the legendary continent. I plan to build a city on the continent as a trading point with the Snow Wind Dukedom. Then let's set it up after the new year. Yes. After learning about Achi's Earth elemental incarnation, Liszt handed the pitch-black ring he had just obtained to Achi to appraise. He touched the black ring that looked like a thumb ring. It looked like some kind of metal alloy, but it did not have any magic reaction and could not be activated by combat aura. The ancient book of knowledge touched the pitch-black ring, and very quickly, a ray of light blossomed. It discovered a section of moon language, metal alloy equivalent alchemy. What does that mean? Liszt was too lazy to use his brain, so he asked directly. Achi carefully examined the few moon language and said, "Brother, if Achi's guess is correct, this pitch-black ring is made from the metal of all the metal dragons." The metal of all the metal dragons? Just like before he obtained the jewel crown, he did not know that there were 36 types of jewel dragons, so naturally he did not know how many types of metal dragons there were. He did not even know how many types of metal there were on Earth. After all, he had never memorized the periodic table of elements. He only knew that the Qinghai cowhide shed, that beauty belongs to you, and some common types of gold, silver, copper, iron, aluminum, tin, lead, titanium, manganese, sodium, potassium, calcium, cobalt, nickel, and mercury. However, there should be more types of metal dragons in this world than on Earth. After all, the Iron Dragon was divided into 5 types: Black Heart Iron Dragon, White Heart Iron Dragon, White Mouth Iron Dragon, Maw Mouth Iron Dragon, and Gray Mouth Iron Dragon. The Copper Dragon was also divided into 4 types: Bronze Dragon, Brass Dragon, Copper Dragon, and Copper Dragon. No one knew whether the Silver Dragon was divided into Silver Dragon, Black Dragon, and so on, or whether the Gold Dragon was divided into Krypton Gold Dragon, 24K Gold Dragon, and so on. He was a little surprised. How much effort did the ancient magic shooters have to spend to gather so many metal dragons? I don't know. The ancient book of knowledge can't identify how many types of metal the Black Ring has. It only has a general concept of metal alloys. Achi shook her head. However, Achi has some clues about its function. It should be related to the legendary alchemy. Does alchemy really exist? Liszt wanted to refute that it was against science to turn a stone into gold, but this was a fantasy world. Everything was possible. I need to study it in depth. Then you take it first and study it when you have time. Basically, the 6 sealing artifacts of the ancient magic shooters are all equipment suitable for magic shooters. It's not fated with me. Liszt felt a little regretful. He also wanted to get some artifacts inherited from the ancient times, but the ancient times were a magic civilization. The artifacts from the Scepter of Time, the 8-Dragon Sword, the Ancient Book of Knowledge, the Jewel Crown, the Black Ring, and the Scar of Fear, were all prepared for the spellcaster profession. At that time, the knight was just a magician's retainer, so he probably couldn't use any good equipment. As a result, Liszt's daily sword was only a great elf weapon, the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword. He didn't get the Dragon Tooth weapon, the Dragon Elf weapon, or the Dragon Soul weapon. These Dragon Tooth, Dragon Soul, and Dragon Elf weapons that were comparable to the ancient magic shooters' artifacts were basically kept in the hands of the dragon-rearing family and rarely spread to the outside world. For example, the Sapphire Grand Duke only used a great elf weapon, the Wailing Cage Sword. Brother can use the Jewel Crown and the 8-Dragon Sword too, Achi said. But I can't use their full power. They are magic shooters' equipment after all. But you don't have to worry about me. I have the Bone Dragon Sword and the Spear of Rat Halos, which are far better than any divine weapon. Moreover, the Orichalcum Dragon Marta made me the Orichalcum Dragon Spear, and the Fury of Thunder are pretty good. The Fury of Thunder was the light green sapphire dragon knight Carl Low Violet's dragon spear. The material was probably an alloy mixed with magic metal. It was slightly inferior to the Orichalcum Dragon Spear. The 2 dragon spears didn't have any additional attributes, but they had good magic conductivity, which was enough to unleash the Dragon Knight's powerful attack power. It was enough for Liszt. He would use the Fury of Thunder and the Orichalcum Dragon Spear in daily battles. When he was in a real battle, the Bone Dragon Winnie would make armor and weapons for him. The Fire Dragon Leo could also turn into the Spear of Rat Halos to help in battle. However, Leo's true dragon form was more powerful. The Bone Dragon Winnie couldn't fly, so she had no choice but to fight in her armor form. In the next 2 days, Achi followed Liszt around to modify the terrain of Flame Island. Her Earth Elemental incarnation was like a map editor, allowing Liszt to happily edit the map and adjust the geography of Flame Island according to his imagination. In the blink of an eye, the new year arrived. Sapphire calendar year 155 ended and 156 began. Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens God Emperor mobile version website. Chapter 975. A huge sand table was built in the hall of Firewood Castle. It was a topographic map of Blazing Island that Achi spent half a day to make. It was very detailed, and even a small river and a small town were reflected in the sand table. However, there were some differences between the sand table and the actual terrain. There were 7 horizontal and 8 vertical rock roads. These were the main transportation routes of the future Blazing Island that Liszt had imagined while looking at the sand table. There were also some amber roads that stored water, canals that connected the rivers, and so on. On the day of the new year, knight, viscount and nobles from all over Blazing Island, including Yevich who had just returned from a long voyage, and the Moonkiller tribe listeners, had all rushed to Firewood Castle to attend the luncheon. As there were more than 100 people, the dining hall could not accommodate them all. Therefore it was changed to an open-air buffet. At this moment, everyone was gathered in the hall, looking at the sand table model of Blazing Island and marveling at the model. They had all seen the map of Blazing Islands released by the Guild of Magic, but the map was not as clear as the sand table. So this is where we live. This is the Blazing Mountain. The Jade Mountain is here and I work in the Jade City. The Dragon Valley is here. Haha, you can also see the Galena. I'm in charge of this mining area. So our Cloud tribe lives here. But I've already led a team of experts to work in the King's City. Why does it feel so close after walking for so many days? This is a sand table just like a map. It looks close but it's actually very far. What a miraculous sand table. Only His Excellency Achilles Ides could create such an exquisite treasure. I wonder if His Excellency Achilles can make a sand table of the legendary continent one day. I can't wait to know how far Blazing Island is from the legendary continent. It should be about the distance from here to the castle gate. Is this a road? It should be a road. Does His Highness want to build a road? Don't we already have a few roads? The Oxtail Marquis quickly walked over and greeted everyone. He then explained to the nobles on behalf of List, although the development area of Blazing Island is not big, His Highness already has a general plan in mind. These 15 roads, 7 horizontal and 8 vertical, will be the main transportation network of Blazing Island in the future. Leaving it to his father to send away the nobles who had come to the castle for the lunch banquet, List hid in the study and chatted with Achi, Chris, Emily, D. Maria, and Sassamit, Holy Tribe listener. At the luncheon today, I'm going to announce a plan to pacify the imbalance of the nobility among the ancient mages. Sorcerers are strictly prohibited from obtaining noble titles, but ancient sorcerers can be a little more flexible, he said leisurely while sipping the best green tea. The development committee encountered a problem. The ancient magicians were not satisfied with the current system of nobility. They wanted to integrate into the system of knight nobility. However, the knight system had excluded mages from the very beginning, and no country had ever conferred knighthood to mages. The nobles could worship mages and give them good social status, but they would never allow mages to touch the foundation of the ruling class, the nobility system. The ancient sorcerers among the Moon Killers did not understand the knight system well, and did not know the opposing relationship between mages and knight. In the few times of bestowal, the ancient sorcerers only received material rewards and rewards for their children, but not any rewards related to nobility. This made the ancient sorcerers who were trying to integrate into the Fire Kingdom very resentful, and there were many times when they resisted. It was better to disperse than to block. List decided to distinguish the sorcerers from the ancient sorcerers. Ancient sorcerers can also be bestowed nobility, but their children must practice fighting energy and become a knight before they can inherit the title. Also, once the ancient sorcerers start a family, they must also change their lifestyle and completely integrate into the knight system. Sassamit, who was also the Holy Tribe listener Sue, heard this and asked, "Seiki, don't call me Seiki anymore. You can call me Your Highness like the other nobles." "Yes, Your Highness." Sue quickly changed the way she addressed him. "Do you know what it means to change your lifestyle? Most of the ancient sorcerers have adapted to the castle life, but the training system cannot be changed. It's not just training, nor is it just adapting to the castle life, but integrating in all aspects, such as making a suitable surname, believing in the glory of the knight, abandoning the concept of tribe, participating in the noble society, and so on. So, you have to understand that the Moon Killer's life in the forest is very backward, and the knight system is the bright future." "I understand, Your Highness. I will try to change my lifestyle, completely integrate into the kingdom, and become a loyal follower of Your Highness." Su was a qualified lackey, and he had seen the power of Seiki and Biglized, so he was obedient to List. Seeing this, List smiled. "After 3 generations, I hope that there will be no titles like Moon Killers, Flame Killers, Eagle Killers, Steel Killers, and so on. All the people living under the protection of the Flame family will only have one common title: Citizens of the Fire Kingdom." This was pure bullshit. Based on the color of their skin, the Moon Killers were destined to be discriminated against and be at the bottom. D. Maria echoed, "Your Highness has great ambitions. The Fire Kingdom will definitely gather a strong sense of unity, and everyone will dedicate their loyalty to the kingdom and the Flame family." The luncheon ended with the cheers of the original tribes of the Moon Killers. The first batch of Moon Killer nobles was about to be born, and they would enjoy the same treatment as the knight nobles, except that their children would need to learn battle energy well before they could inherit the title. When these knight and ancient sorcerers left Firewood Fort and returned to their respective castles, only List's family, Achi, Emily, Chris, Paris and the twins Lucy and Ruth, were left in Firewood Fort. This made Emily a little disappointed. Originally, she thought that His Highness had only invited her. She did not expect Paris to be there too. She did not care about Chris, the president of the Guild of Magic, nor did she dare to care about Achi, the magic shooter. However, she was quite concerned about Paris, who was once rumored to be the lover of the Lord. Vaguely, the way they looked at Paris was tinged with hostility. Paris, on the other hand, only looked at Emily with a normal attitude. She had already spent the new year with List more than once. As List's strength and status grew, she had long hidden her love for him in her heart, and considered herself a loyal follower. Of course, if the Lord needed her, she was ready to offer her body at any time. As for Chris, she might have some love for List, but her mind was more immersed in the truth. Lucy and Ruth were brought over by Achi. She admired the twins very much, and had the intention of taking them in as disciples and teaching them seriously. Of course, the twins were more like two servants to Achi, helping Achi with some of the chores that she did not like. In fact, List had originally invited the vice president of the Guild of Magic, Kenley, but Kenley could not leave. The mages in the Guild of Magic were basically single dogs. They did not have the concept of family, and naturally did not have the idea of celebrating the new year. They still did their experiments during the holidays, so they could not do without her and Chris's management. Chris went to Firewood Fort, so she stayed on duty. It's really enviable. Looking at the few women chatting with List in the living room, Levis, who was tightly controlled by Rolia, could not help but exclaim in admiration. The few women here were all people of high status in the Fire Kingdom. They were both beautiful and powerful, and were the targets of love for countless knights. However, they were all spending the New Year's Day in Firewood Fort. They laughed heartily at the few cold jokes that List said, which were almost not funny at all. As for him, even when he had a lover outside, he had to be secretive, afraid that Rolia would find out. Too embarrassed to enter the living room, he left quietly. When he turned around, he could not help but mutter to himself, "Can you do whatever you want just because you have a dragon?" Chapter 976. The New Year's bell rang 9 times. It represented the passing of a year and the arrival of a new year. There was no snow on Flame Island, and the atmosphere of the new year was not as good as it was on Black Horse Island, but the lively atmosphere increased. There were more and more elves, making the small fire castle noisy from morning to night. Chris and Paris had gone back. Lucy and Ruth, who were still young, slept in the guest room. Emily was also arranged to rest in the guest room. List and Achi hid on the balcony of the study, looking at the increasing stars in the sky. He hugged Achi and smelled the fragrance of Achi's beautiful blue hair. Illusory smoke slowly appeared in front of his eyes, forming a serpentine. Mission completed. Reward, a dragon elf. He raised his eyebrows and his heart swayed, but he quickly calmed down. The dragon elf was his, and sooner or later it would be his. There was no need to be anxious. Then he looked at the new smoke mission. Mission. The time to establish a nation in 3 years is getting closer, but the location of the king's city has just been selected. There is still a long time before the construction of the palace. Perhaps we should speed up the pace of construction. Please create a suitable foundation for the palace and the king's city. Reward, a new species of mangrove. The content and reward of the new mission did not seem to be too outstanding. Achi, do you think the power of fate can be controlled? He suddenly felt something and asked Achi. The power of fate represented by the smoke could only be seen by him. Achi was a little puzzled. Didn't you say that man can conquer nature? That's right. A person's fate, of course, depends on their own struggle, but also the process of history must be taken into account. But my achievements are already legendary. I built a kingdom from nothing. The era of the knight has not appeared in the entire legendary continent for many years. Duchies were divided and united. There were often families who built a kingdom because they rode a dragon, and there were families who perished because the dragon died. But there were few fluctuations in the kingdoms. For example, in the northeast corner of the legendary continent, the Eagle Kingdom, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, and the Blast Furnace Kingdom had been fighting for hegemony for more than 1,000 years. The birth of the Fire Kingdom was definitely a strong color in the legendary continent for more than 1,000 years. With the singing of bards, it would gradually spread from the northeast corner to the far end of the continent. In the end, no one knew what would happen to List. However, he would definitely become the best material for many night. Perhaps Achi was the same. She was a magic shooter who rose to prominence in the era of the shrinking of the weave, and was similarly a legend. We have all become a part of the legend. Achi, the next step is to make the legend more exciting. When the Fire Kingdom has stabilized, I will bring you to tour the entire legendary continent. Then we will cross the Devil's Sea and look for the Lost Sun's child civilization. What do you think? Achi nodded. But soon she asked, didn't you say that you want to conquer the legendary continent? Aha, I've said many things, but times have changed. If there's a chance, conquer. If there's no chance, then be an adventurer. Maybe many years later, there will be a legend about the king of adventurers left behind by us. Anyway, the world is very big and I want to see it. Achi wants to go and take a look too. As they were chatting, a big elf suddenly crept up behind List. What's wrong, Carl? It was Carl, the giant Kojak elf. He whispered, Ella and Ash just fought. Carly and Yadi fanned the flames behind them. Ella was a thorn elf, and Ash was a pea elf. Well, what was the result of the fight? Carl said, Ash took out a rope to tie Ella, and Jia stretched out her palm to slap Ash, but the old butler came over and separated them. Otherwise, the house would have been smashed. Well, very good, Carl. Go and watch them again. Report to me directly if there's anything unusual. Okay. Carl got the task and flew back excitedly. He wanted to help List monitor these restless elves and maintain the harmony of Firewood Castle. Carl is very interesting, Achi said with a smile. List nodded. He is indeed a very interesting big elf. If I want to open an elven school, I will definitely recommend Carl to be the class monitor. He has the potential to be a class leader. But Carly, Yadi, and Ella will definitely not be convinced by Carl's management. It doesn't matter. The class leader doesn't have to be convinced by the students as long as the teacher is convinced. Neither of his two dragon elves had the potential to be an elf butler. Carly liked to run around and Yadi fanned the flames. Among the rest of the active elves, Ella had always been a butler. But her position was the catfish in the catfish effect, the bully and villain among the elves. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but think, will the reward of the smoke mission be a wild dragon elf or an evolved one? He didn't let List wait any longer. The reward of the dragon elf soon came to light. The great phoenix elf, Ainfant, had finally evolved into a phoenix dragon elf. List, thank you for your help. I feel great now. Ainfant, who had grown to a meter tall, had become elegant. Looking at the naked Ainfant, he asked, well, do you need me to prepare a few sets of clothes for you? Clothes, I don't really like to wear them, but I'm a knight now. List, help me prepare a few sets of armor. Ainfant thought for a moment and replied. Ainfant was no longer willing to fly by himself. Every day he rode Goldie, Little Red and Little Purple around, replacing List to manage the flock of birds in the Phoenix Parasol Forest. So, do you continue to live here or do you want to live in Fire Castle with me? I don't like living in a castle. I'm a sky knight. Flying in the sky is my way of life. Go back, List. Next time you come to see me, don't forget to bring me the latest flavor of jade powder. Oh, by the way, I don't need this dragon scale anymore. Help me return it to Leo. Ainfant took out the scale from Leo's tail. After the successful evolution, the Phoenix Parasol Dragon Elf no longer liked the Fire Dragon Leo. Okay, I'll leave the flock to you, Ainfant. Don't worry, leave it to me. Ainfant has also become a dragon elf. Now, I have 3 dragon elves, 9 greater elves, more than 100 lesser elves and many sprite worms. It's still not enough, not in line with the identity of a king. However, I have 6 dragons, hee. List felt quite happy. In a flash, they had already arrived at the Killing Moon Holy Mountain. Achi was riding Unicorn Charlie, observing the terrain near the Holy Mountain. She wanted to help List complete the smoke mission. How is it, have you finished surveying the terrain? List asked. Well, now that I have a general idea, how will Big Brother transform the Holy Mountain? The smoke mission allowed List to lay the foundation for Monarch City and the palace. List understood that the foundation was the foundation. After a few days of thinking, he had a preliminary idea. I'm going to pick an area with a side length of 10 kilometers in the valley at the foot of the Holy Mountain. When it rises, it will be at least 10 meters higher than the surrounding area. With a side length of 10 kilometers, the area would be 100 square kilometers, more than enough to build Monarch City. Then, he continued, the palace will be built on the Holy Mountain. The Holy Mountain is formed by 2 mountains side by side, forming an hourglass valley. I hope you can help me build a rock platform between the 2 mountains. I want the palace to cross the peaks of the two mountains. Chapter 977. Originally, List wanted to build a castle similar to Minas Tirith, the capital of the Kingdom of Gondor in The Lord of the Rings. It was the big city that was integrated with the mountain. However, the sacred mountain of the Moonkiller was not a unique mountain, but two mountain ranges crisscrossed side by side, forming an hourglass-like valley. In the middle of the valley was the entrance to the ruins. If he pursued the integration of the mountain and the city, it would be difficult to be symmetrical, so he planned to build a bridge-like support between the two mountains and wrap the entrance to the ruins into the future palace. The palace could be a building complex built on the top of the two mountains. With a cheese magic to strengthen the mountains and arrange magic, the future palace would be absolutely indestructible. Moreover, he had the Iron Dragon and the Mountain Copper Dragon, so he could spend a little Dragon Supreme magic to infect the mountains with metal, thus strengthening the mountains into an impregnable castle. The design plan had been chosen. List rode the Mountain Copper Dragon Marta in the air and watched, while Achi rode the Unicorn Charlie, holding the 8 Dragons' divine sword and wearing a jewel crown on her head. She began to touch the magic net and cast powerful earth magic. Rumble. As she cast the magic, the earth began to rumble, and the place where the holy tribe lived was rising bit by bit. The soil, under the stimulation of earth elemental magic, quickly condensed into rock, piece by piece becoming a flat solid foundation, only a small number of places still retaining soil. These places needed to be dug for wells, parks, and even sewers. All day, Achi kept replenishing her magic, and at the same time she kept raising the foundation. At night, the foundation of the capital was finally completely lifted. It became a huge high platform, 10 meters higher than the surrounding ground, on which the future city would be built. The solid rock foundation ensured that even if there was a major earthquake in the future, the city would not be destroyed. Seiki. 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 The Moonkiller in the distance saw the changes in the earth and the holy Achi in the sky, and all of them knelt on the ground, shouting the name of the ancient magic shooter ancestor, Seiki, which meant holy. With Achi's current strength, she can almost beat an ancient magic shooter, right? List exclaimed in his heart. The combination of the unicorn and the magic shooter directly raised the powerful magic ability of the magic shooter to the same level as the Dragon Knight. The Supreme Magic Shooter and the High Magic Shooter were essentially worlds apart. High magic was just magic power, but Supreme Magic had all kinds of unimaginable properties. Marta was shocked to see such a change. It had always thought that it was the most powerful dragon, the representative of the pinnacle of power. It didn't even put the invisible dragon that could travel through space in its eyes. However, when it saw the power of Achi's magic, it had a huge impact on it. It turned out that it was not the only one who had the peak power. From today onwards, Flame King City will break through the ground. Brother, Achi feels like I'm getting stronger and stronger. I've mastered Water Elemental Incarnation, Wind Elemental Incarnation, Space Elemental Incarnation, and Earth Elemental Incarnation. The next step is for Achi to learn Wind Elemental Incarnation and truly master the ability to fly. Achi was mentally exhausted, but mentally she was excited. The sense of accomplishment of personally transforming the earth, mountains, and rivers was no less than List riding a dragon. My Achi is getting stronger and stronger. List couldn't help but rub Achi's beautiful blue hair. It was hard to imagine that the little siren he had saved had grown into such a peerless beauty. Brother, you're not bad either. The Phoenix Incarnation is very powerful. If you ride a dragon, you'll be even more powerful. Haha, let's not flatter each other. You're very tired now. You need to rest and recuperate. Well, when Achi wakes up, I'll help you transform the holy mountain. Achi yawned. She had consumed too much mental power during the day, and the energetic magic shooter was almost unable to bear it. Even when Achi woke up the next morning, her eyes were still a little bloodshot. Seeing this, List directly stopped her from continuing to release magic. No, Achi, you have to continue to rest. I didn't expect the full use of Elemental Incarnation to take such a heavy mental toll on you. It's okay, brother. It doesn't take too much energy to transform the holy mountain. That won't do. Let's recuperate first. This rest lasted for 2 days before Achi recovered to her peak state. Then, according to the original design, the top of the holy mountain was easily connected through the long stone bridge. This way, the original hourglass valley really became an hourglass, with only half a gap between the two mountains. This place is not bad. The valley is very shady, very suitable for me to live in. Bone Dragon Winnie also came over with List. Seeing the transformed hourglass valley, she wanted to move her dragon nest here. There's no hurry. The capital and the palace need time to repair. Your dragon nest can be moved here after the capital and palace are repaired. As you wish, Your Highness. Bone Dragon Winnie giggled. After becoming a bone dragon, Virginia seemed to have become a lot more open and began to enjoy her life as a dragon. She was always in high spirits. Standing on the long stone bridge, looking at the height of nearly 500 meters from the ground, Liszt could not help but feel relaxed. Building the palace here is like building it in the sky. This is in line with my identity and can show my majesty. When I have time, I'll go around the palaces of the three kingdoms and find some inspiration. As the legendary Flame King, Liszt had very high requirements for his palace. It must be more magnificent and domineering than the palaces of the three kingdoms. If brother wants to hollow out the mountain to build a castle, a chi can also help. Won't you be very busy studying magic? Hee, the future palace will also be a chi's home. A chi likes to build her own home. Yes, this is our home. Liszt smiled slightly. In this period of his life, a chi was the most important family. When the time comes, we will personally decorate the inside and outside of the palace, build it into the most luxurious palace in the world, and become the light of civilization. In a trance, smoke appeared in front of him. Mission completed. Reward, a new species of mangrove. What the new species of mangrove was temporarily unknown, but he could ask the mangrove great elf, Nami. She was the most diligent great elf in the castle and was opening up a new mangrove forest in Estuary City. Perhaps this reward was hidden in the swamp of the estuary and would be discovered by Nami at any time. With Nami's intelligence, as long as she found a valuable species of mangrove, she would definitely report to a chi. At this time, the new smoke mission slowly took shape. Mission. Perhaps you have not paid attention to the islands outside of Flame Island for a long time. At this moment, Anchor Island is being invaded by a strange creature. As the master of the sea, you should go and investigate the situation of the creature invasion. Reward, evil sea spirit. Chapter 978. Anchor Island. Tulip Islands, the 9th largest archipelago, was located in the sea southeast of Flame Island. Liszt and a chi stood on the shore of Anchor Island, frowning as they looked at the blue sea. Simple and ugly shacks had been built on the surface of the sea. There was a creature that was similar to the ancient fish clown that he had seen before. It lived in these shacks in the shallow water region. Its upper body looked like a strange fish, and its lower body had webbed feet like a toad's. Its hands were also like a toad's, holding a fishbone-like weapon. Gwa! Gwa! These ugly creatures had yellow-green skin, and they uttered some rhythmic but monotonous words, like some kind of primitive language. Brother, these monsters are so ugly, a chi said in disgust. She felt a little disappointed. Liszt said he would take her here to see the sea, but she didn't expect to see such ugly monsters. They are indeed ugly, but what are these creatures? They are a bit similar to the fish clowns in the Temple of Fish Clowns. They may be the offspring of the fish clown race. But the necro fish clown that Virginia turned into was several meters tall, and now the monsters here are less than a meter tall. The difference is too big. Liszt shook his head. He came to Anchor Island to investigate the invasion of these strange creatures according to the Smoke Mission's instructions. The reward of the Smoke Mission was the evil sea spirit. He didn't know what the evil sea spirit was, but it was very likely that it was these ugly creatures. However, looking at these ugly creatures, he really didn't know how this thing counted as a reward. These ugly creatures not only lived in the shallow water, but also constantly migrated to the land. Although they had no magic power and weren't fast, their strong arms could throw sharp fishbone weapons, so it was easy to kill World of Warcraft on the shore. Brother, look, there's a fish clown magician over there, a chi said, pointing to the distant coastline. Liszt quickly rode on the invisible dragon bard and flew over. From the material boundary, he observed the ugly creature magician that a chi had mentioned. It was a rather tall and ugly creature. Seeing this creature, Liszt had to admit that it was very likely that they were the offspring of a clown fish. It looked almost the same as the necromancy fish clown in the Temple of Fish Clown, but it was much smaller, only 1.5 meters tall. Faint light blue mana retroaction radiated from his body, and the fish bone in his hand was also rippling with blue mana retroaction radiance. It was leading a group of clowns to capture a low-level water attribute World of Warcraft, Wading Leopard. Every time the wading leopard tried to escape, Magician Yuchio would cast a spell. It seemed to be the water spell, Aura of Water, binding the wading leopard. When the waiting leopard released magic to counterattack, it could always kill one or two fish clowns, but more fish clowns pounced on it. In the end, after dozens of clowns died, the waiting leopard was also killed. Then, the clown magician arrogantly commanded the ordinary clowns to carry the dead waiting leopard to its simple shack. Similar scenes were happening along the entire east coast of Anchor Island. They were densely packed with ugly fish. They seemed to be organized in a tribal structure, with large numbers ranging from 20 to 30,000 to 4 to 5,000. Led by one or more clown magicians, they took route along the coastline and constantly hunted World of Warcraft in the forest on land. List only counted roughly, and there were at least hundreds of thousands of clowns. Have these clowns always lived here? He didn't think so. He had come here before to map the terrain and didn't find any clowns. The smoke mission also indicated that it was a biological invasion. In any case, these clowns had to be carefully investigated. It seemed that clowns had lived in the sea before and only recently invaded land. From the gills on the side of their mouths, it could be seen that they were originally aquatic creatures. In the shallow sea, many shacks were submerged and only exposed when the tide was low. They were probably forced to invade land from the sea, otherwise they wouldn't live in the shallow sea instead of on land. So to find the reason, he had to look under the sea. With a chi here, diving was no different from taking a walk. The two quickly dove to the bottom of the sea, and sure enough, there was an endless stretch of clown shacks under the sea. Searching along the clown shacks, List soon found even larger shacks. These shacks were inhabited by clowns that were 2 meters tall, and they had even more intense magic power. As they went deeper into the sea, more tall shacks appeared, inhabited by even taller clowns that were already 3 meters tall. Of course, these 3-meter-tall clowns were very rare, with only 1 or 2 in a huge area. But it was the different heights of these different species of clowns that made List realize. It seems that these clowns are indeed the descendants of the ancient clowns. That makes sense. If ancient warrior inheritors can exist, why can't the clowns reproduce? He just didn't know if there were Nagas and mermaids apart from clowns. Back in the clown temple, there were many Naga statues and huge mermaid statues in addition to the clown statues. Just as he was thinking, a chi suddenly reminded him, "Brother, there is a high magic reaction ahead." List, who was casting magic eyes, also found the light of mana retroaction in the deep sea ahead. It was a rich black magic light, which was the dark attribute mana retroaction. Let's go and see. As he gradually approached, he suddenly found that it was a huge monster with a body length of more than 10 meters. The upper body was humanoid and the lower body was like a fish tail. At first glance, the outline looked like a mermaid, but it was covered with sarcomas, its skin was dry and wrinkled, and it was 10 times uglier than a fish. This monster also found List and a chi. One of its eyes flashed scarlet, and the other was cloudy white, probably blind. It opened its bloody mouth and spat out a black halo at List and a chi. A chi waved a water wheel wall to block the black halo. Because the unicorn was also galloping in the water, it still increased the chi's magic power. So even if it was just an ordinary water magic water wheel wall, it still exerted the effect of supreme magic and easily resisted the monster's attack. It's dark magic, very corrosive, belonging to the high magic level, but the strength of this monster is much weaker than it looks. A chi analyzed. List saw that there were still a lot of clowns around as well as leftover animal bones, and vaguely guessed that the reason for the clowns' invasion of land was probably caused by this monster. So he said directly, "A chi, help me catch it alive, I want to study it." Okay. A chi waved her hand and several water supreme magic formed a halo of water, quickly binding the monster, and no matter how the monster struggled, it could not escape. It could only obediently be dragged to the shore by the halo of water magic. Those clowns had been falling behind the monster, seeming to want to rescue the monster, but did not dare to approach List and a chi and could only croak. Chapter 980. Do you think this is a variant of the mermaids? Looking at the extremely ugly monster, List asked strangely, because he found that the monster's outline was similar to that of a mermaid, with breasts and long hair covering its ugly, disgusting and tumor-ridden body. Legend has it that mermaids were all female, with perfect breasts and long hair like a waterfall. And from the mermaid statue in the temple of the clownfish and the Naga statue surrounding it, it could be seen that mermaids were the kings of the sea races. The ugly monster in front of him obviously controlled these clownfish, so it was very likely that it was in a superior and subordinate relationship with the clownfish race. In other words, it was a mermaid that probably suffered some kind of mutation to grow into its current appearance, and its magic attribute had also changed to dark. Achi was also looking at the 10-meter-long monster. Brother, now that you mention it, Achi also thinks that it may be a variant of the mermaids. High dark magic, tumor-ridden, rotten appearance, and the aura of death shrouding its body, it's very likely a soul mutation. Soul mutation. Yes, this is a new topic that Achi discovered when she was studying Lich Andi. There is a strong connection between the soul and the body. Once the soul mutation occurs, it will cause the body to mutate, but it is difficult for the body to cause the soul to mutate. So what should we do with this mutant mermaid? Seal it on the beach, and then Achi will build a laboratory here to study the mutant mermaid and investigate its origin. As for these clownfish, as long as we control the mutant mermaid, we should be able to command them. What do you think of them as slaves, brother? As slaves? List carefully looked at these clownfish. Clownfish couldn't move easily on land and their intelligence was limited, but they were very strong and had a good organizational structure. Once controlled, they could be used as cheap labor to do some rough work. So he said, I think it's fine, and once tamed they can be used for marine farming, and their role in developing the sea is much better than that of fishermen. Indeed. The trip to Anchor Island was basically a success. Sealing the mutant mermaid for future research, and the clownfish race would also be added to the list of taming. Most importantly, the appearance of the clownfish and the mutated mermaid revealed a lot of information that List was looking forward to. The ancient race had not been annihilated. In that case, the glorious magic civilization of the Moon Empire era might still be struggling at death's door in this world. Mission complete. Reward, Evil Sea Spirit. After capturing the mutant mermaid, the smoke mission was completed. Obviously, the clownfish's invasion was caused by this mutant mermaid. And this mutant mermaid should be the so-called Evil Sea Spirit. In the legends, the status of mermaids was much higher than that of the sea monsters. They were worthy of the title of Sea Spirit. A dark element variant mermaid was naturally an evil sea spirit. List had a lot of curiosity about the mermaid list, but he was not a research-type scholar after all. The research on the mutated mermaids had to be carried out by Achi and the mages from the Guild of Magic. Fortunately, the news of the birth of a magic shooter on the sea had spread far and wide with the singing of bards. Therefore, many mages from unknown countries were slowly making a pilgrimage to the Blazing Island. They would live on Black Horse Island for a period of time, reading a batch of unimportant information and rules and regulations of the Guild of Magic. If they were interested and willing to join the Guild of Magic, they could get a chance to go to the Blazing Island. If they were unwilling to obey the management and serve the guild, they would be repatriated, and it would be impossible to get the opportunity to cross the magic gate of the Heart Island. It was even more impossible to see Achi on a pilgrimage. Even with such harsh conditions, a large number of mages continued to join. In Chris's report before the year, the registered members of the Guild of Magic had exceeded 3,600, the vast majority of which were magic apprentices, and a large part of them were magic apprentices trained by the Fire Kingdom. There were about 1,000 mages and more than 50 great mages. If the ancient sorcerers who had almost zero research ability were included, there were more than 10,000 ancient sorcerers alone, among which there were close to 300 ancient sorcerers who were at the level of great sorcerers. Although the ancient mages were far behind modern mages in terms of spell casting and efficiency, their strength was increasing as they continued to integrate into the modern magic system. It had to be said that the magic dust made by the elves was too strong for magic practice. Therefore, even though List had issued a strict law prohibiting the production of magic dust by harming the elves, there were still mages who took the risk of buying sprite worms from some of the Moonkiller tribes that had not yet been incorporated and making them into magic dust to assist their own magic practice. Such mages would be executed directly after being caught, and their corpses would be used for research. There was no room for reprieve. In short, the discovery of the mutant mermaid and the clownfish race would inevitably attract a large number of mages to Anchor Island for research. Achi would master the distribution of research tasks, and there was no need for List to worry. What he was worried about now was the new smoke mission. The discovery of the mutant mermaid is disturbing, especially the terrible results caused by the soul mutation. It seems to indicate that there is some source of evil power in the sea, polluting the once noble mermaid race. As the master of the sea, it is necessary to investigate the source of evil. Reward, the Devil's Trail. The source of evil, the Devil's Trail, sounds a bit scary. While Achi was preparing to set up the marine laboratory, List was taming the clownfish while waiting to dive. He certainly could not dive into the sea to investigate the source of evil, so he had to rely on Achi's ability. The mission reward is the Devil's Trail. What does this mean? Or what does the devil represent? Does it mean the Devil's Sea or some unknown creature? Whether it was the Azure Wave Sea or the Shell Sea, they were just coastal waters on the continental shelf. The real deep sea was the Devil's Sea on the other side of the continental slope. When looking for the Dragon Turtle Island, List and Achi had approached the Devil's Sea. The weather of the Devil's Sea was erratic, and the waves were violent and frightening, making it difficult to navigate. After that, he devoted all his energy to developing the blazing island and plundering the continent's kingdoms. He did not investigate the Devil's Sea again, nor did he try to cross the Devil's Sea to find the Sun's Child civilization. Just as he was thinking, the tamed clownfish seemed to have found a good opportunity and directly pounced on List. Bang! List casually waved out a dragon's fighting spirit, smashing the pouncing clownfish into pieces, shocking the other clowns that were ready to move. These ugly, useless clowns were not very intelligent, probably a little higher than chimpanzees. They could barely be regarded as an intelligent race, but they were not obedient enough. Perhaps the magicians among the clowns, the magical creatures that List called clownfish priests, had a strong control over the clowns, so they did not care if they died. However, List used the dragon's deterrence to subdue them, but they were not willing to obey. In the past 2 days of taming, he killed about 100 clowns, but these clowns still resisted with red eyes, without any self-awareness of the slave race. The clownfish priests were the same. They only had a one-track mind and did not have the self-awareness of the weak at all. They even dared to wave their bone sticks in the face of the dragon knight. Bang! List was afraid of another clown that wanted to attack him. He sighed and said, "To tame the clown race, it seems that I can't just rely on strength. I still have to find a way from the mutant mermaids. Riding with illness, Lao Bai is suffering. Please count some tickets to comfort me." Chapter 981. The unicorn could not travel through space, but with its speed and Achi's ability to control water, it could run faster than the speed of sound on land or sea. Although the Flame Archipelago was very large, it seemed very small when running back and forth at the speed of sound. Estuary City, Mangrove Forest. Achi brought 6 space rings filled with materials to build an offshore laboratory. She stopped by to visit Nami. The hard-working mangrove elf Nami was working with a group of serfs to build a mangrove forest in the swamp area of the Whirlpool Estuary. After more than half a year of cultivation, the place was already covered with trees. "Achi, Achi, you're here." Nami waved her little hand. "Nami, look what you brought, Achi. It's peanut nougat produced by the old workshop." Achi handed over a small bag of candy wrapped in paper. "Thank you, Achi. It's very nice. I like this kind of peanut nougat." "How are you doing here?" Achi asked with concern. Although Nami was her contracted elf, she was too busy to pay attention to her. Nami replied with a smile, "I like it here. I'm building a huge mangrove forest. There are already mallards and flamingos breeding here. Oh, by the way, Achi, I found something good. List will definitely like it." "What is it?" Nami led the way and Charlie the unicorn followed behind. Soon they came to a new mangrove forest. Nami pointed at the slightly different mangrove trees and said, "Achi, look, these are a new species of mangrove trees that originally grew in the swamp. They grow very fast and have magic power." "Magic power?" Achi immediately cast the super magic Eye of Magic. Soon she found that this small patch of mangrove trees was emitting chaotic light. It was a new species of magic potion. "Nami, you found the magic potion mangrove. That's great. In the future, mangrove forests can also produce magic potions." The value of magic potions was not obvious to mages. However, for a knight, magic potions were a symbol of wealth and strength, especially those planted by elves. The birth of a magic potion of a species of great elf was definitely a big event worthy of celebration. Achi could imagine how happy List would be when he heard the news. So, she directly sent a magic message to the Reed City office and informed the development committee. "Mangrove forest in the Whirlpool Estuary. Nami, the great elf of the mangrove forest, found the magic potion mangrove. Send people to promote the planting immediately." The administrative office of Reed City was the office of the development committee. There was no need for List to personally give the order. After receiving the news, the development committee contacted the officials of Estuary City to take charge of the mangrove forest's potion planting. Achi said goodbye to Nami and came to the port of Estuary. Several 3-masted ships were already filled with cargo. Seeing Achi arrive on the divine unicorn, the crew all knelt on the ground and solemnly saluted. Kenly Truth bowed and walked over. "Mr. President, the cargo ship is ready." She was here to assist in the establishment of the marine laboratory. Then let's go. Achi rode the unicorn Charlie to the front of the fleet. With a wave of her hand, a huge current propelled several three-masted ships forward like rockets. His speed continued to increase, and he finally reached a super high speed of 800 kilometers per hour as he sailed toward Anchor Island. Soon they arrived at Anchor Island. There were no more clowns in the place where he had chosen to build the laboratory on the sea. List had cleaned them all out. Since he had nothing better to do, he tried to tame the stubborn clowns. Unfortunately, he failed many times. He could only pin his hopes on the research of the mutant mermaids in the marine laboratory. When Achi commanded the magicians and the construction of the marine laboratory was basically completed, he took Achi and dived into the sea again to investigate the source of evil and find the real reason for the appearance of the mutant mermaids. The underwater world was colorful. Clowns of different sizes could be seen hunting fish in groups. Occasionally they would even chase after sea monsters. These ancient races were full of vitality and there was no trace of extinction at all. It was unknown why humans had not discovered them for so many years. Or why the clown race, which was once distributed along the coast of the legendary continent, would migrate to the Flame Islands. Of course, now was not a good time to think about this question. List followed behind Achi and the unicorn. He could not get the unicorn's approval and could not ride with Achi. Brother, this is the place where Achi catches the mutant mermaids. Yes. This was a nest at the bottom of the sea, scattered with all kinds of broken bones. It could be vaguely seen that many of the skeletons belonged to land animals. In other words, those clowns caught World of Warcraft from the shore and sent it here for the mutant mermaids to eat. Achi, can you sense the source of the breath of the mutant mermaids? No, the current is too fast, a lot of the breath has long been washed away, and the mutant mermaids should have lived here for a long time, the traces of their migration have long disappeared. Achi shook her head. This made List very regretful. He wanted to continue searching in the direction of the deep sea, but the underwater world was too big, and it was too difficult to find any valuable clues here. Just as List was about to retreat, Achi suddenly rolled up a stream of water and rolled a scale from the remains of the bones. After a little sensing, she handed the scale to List. Brother, look, this scale is from the mutant mermaids, it has a strong dark magic on it. Brother, do you remember this pair of mermaid guard earrings? It is made of this scale, but the magic aura and level are stronger. She took out a pair of azure earrings from her spatial ring. The mermaid guard was a gift from Marilyn Red White Rose, and List gave it to Achi, but Achi did not like to wear jewelry, so she had always kept it in her spatial ring. The grayish-black mutant mermaid scale was the size of a palm, and it was heart-shaped. The blue scale of the mermaid guard was only the size of a fingernail, and it was also heart-shaped. The mermaid's protection is a mermaid scale that has been condensed. Its water element contains supreme magic. This grayish-black scale is a mermaid scale that has been contaminated. It only contains high dark magic. Achi, prepare to sense the mutated mermaid scale to see if you can find its migration route. Achi thought so because the scales on the lower body and tail of the mutant mermaid were almost gone. She used a little trick, and suddenly the grayish-black scale emitted a dim black light, and then the light pointed to a place. Over there is a similar scale over there. List made a prompt decision. Let's go. After a few minutes of traveling, they found a palm-sized, grayish-black, heart-shaped mermaid scale in the mud at the bottom of the sea. Achi cast the spell again, got another hint, and swam to a new location with List. This repeated several times and they had found a total of 5 scales. Brother, did you notice that the color of these scales has dimmed? Yes, the scales were grayish-black before, but now they have turned gray. Let's continue to look for the next place and see what happened. Chapter 982. He found a total of 32 scales that had fallen off. The color of the scales gradually changed from gray to black, and by the time he picked up the 32nd scale, the color of the scale had turned light blue. And the place where the scale fell also extended to a trench, the edge of which was at least 5,000 kilometers deep, and the pressure was enormous. Fortunately, Achi's ability to control water was almost perfect under the enhancement of the unicorn, and she didn't feel the pressure of the deep sea at all. However, List was a little scared. The sea here could no longer see the sun, and he could only explore the bottom of the sea with the light of the magic flashlight. A few strange sea monsters would sneak up on the dark bottom of the sea from time to time, and although their attack power wasn't enough in front of Achi, it was still scary. The mutant mermaid climbed up from this trench, and it must have been polluted by some evil power that made it what it is now. The fish clown should live in the shallow sea and was controlled by the mutant mermaid to invade the land, which shows that the mutant mermaid hasn't been around for a long time. He said. Achi nodded and said, "Then brother, let's dive into the trench and search. Be careful." Okay. The depth of the trench was shallower than expected, about 1,000 kilometers into the trench, which was more than 6,000 kilometers from the surface. They had reached the bottom of the trench. The light of the magic flashlight illuminated the bottom of the sea, and they could see towering cliffs on both sides, with some strange small creatures swimming around. The atmosphere was gloomy, and some creepy sounds came from afar. Snort. Charlie the unicorn didn't like this place very much and snorted impatiently. List held a bunch of magic flashlights in his hands, so that the light could illuminate farther and see the environment at the bottom of the trench. Achi, on the other hand, held the mermaid's scale and released magic to search for the direction of the magic power on the scale. Soon, the light on the scale pointed a direction to a crack on the cliff. "Brother, this way. Let's go." After entering the crack on the cliff and swimming not far, List was surprised by the scene in front of him. At the end of the crack was an undersea cave, and there were statues buried in it. There was a 5-meter-tall statue of a fish clown, and a 10-meter-tall statue of a naga. 2-armed naga, 4-armed naga, ferocious naga, humanoid naga. Some of these statues were half buried in the mud at the bottom of the sea, some were broken, and some were almost ground into powder. However, List's gaze quickly went past these statues and landed on the center of the cave. There was a building that looked like an altar and there were 6 statues on it. They were all statues of mermaids, and each of them was nearly 20 meters tall, about the same size as the mermaid statue in the Temple of Fish Clown. "Brother, did you notice? There are not 6 statues but 7. Achi glanced over and found the incongruity. The altar could accommodate 7 mermaid statues, but there were only 6 here. When the 2 of them approached, they discovered that although the 7th statue was gone, there were many palm-sized azure scales that had fallen down. It's the scales of a mermaid. It's very dark in color and has a lot of magic power. Moreover, it's a high-level magic power. Achi, do you think the mutated mermaid escaped from here? It's very likely." Casting magic eyes, Achi kept scanning the surroundings and suddenly found that in the center of the altar surrounded by statues was a spring with slow-flowing water, and the spring water exuded a faint dark magic. After List cast magic eyes, he also noticed the spring water. After seeing the dark magic, he understood what the source of evil the smoke mission was. The power that pollutes the mutated mermaid should originate from this spring, and Achi, I have a bold idea. What bold idea? Achi asked. Of the 7 mermaid statues, 1 missing must have been caused by the evil power emitted by this spring. The original mutated mermaid probably represented a statue. As for the remaining 6 statues, they could all be sealed by real mermaids. Sealed by real mermaids? Achi was surprised for a moment, and then came to a realization. It's really possible. It's said that the legendary Medusa has the magic to turn people into stone. Maybe these mermaid statues are really mermaids who have been sealed. All of a sudden, the originally ordinary mermaid statue became a treasure in the eyes of the 2. In legend, the magic of mermaids is much stronger than that of the sirens, so much so that the sirens are simply a legend among sailors, and there is not much circulation on land. But the mermaid is a great species that has been passed down since the era of the Moon Empire, the ruler of the sea. Let's ignore the mermaid statue for the time being. Achi, can you find out the source of the power of this spring? List restrained his excitement about the mermaid and focused his attention on the spring. Smoke had already appeared in front of him. Mission completed. Reward, Devil's Trail. While Achi was thinking, the smoke has been distorted and changed, forming new serpentines. Mission. Now that the mystery of the mermaid statue has been discovered, why not reverse the stone seal magic and reverse the mermaid from the statue to the real mermaid? Maybe they hold the missing historical secrets. Reward, Mermaid's Heart. Phew. Seeing this new mission, List was unable to calm down. Even the smoke mission confirmed that these mermaid statues are definitely sealed by the real mermaids. Once the seal is undone, it will be 6 magical mermaids. No, it's 7 and a corrupted mutant mermaid. Just as he turned his attention back to the mermaid statue and fantasized about obtaining 7 mermaid followers and conquering the world, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Achi suddenly raised her hand and cast magic, freezing the spring from water into ice. Among the ice, there were traces of gray mist flowing. She did not stop. One of her arms switched to Earth Elemental Incarnation. She quickly released earth elemental magic to divide the altar into 4 halves and slowly moved it around. After moving the altar, it slowly revealed the black hole connected to the spring. It seemed that in order to suppress this black hole, the altar was built and the 7 mermaids were sealed. Be careful, it won't be good if you run into something evil. Brother, don't worry, Charlie can feel the power inside this black hole. It's just a pure special power, there are no evil creatures. Charlie also has this function? List turned his head and glanced at the unicorn with its shining horn. Of course, Charlie is very powerful. Achi looked a little proud. The unicorn Charlie was indeed a magical and enviably pure creature. She smiled. List did not respond. He was still not satisfied with Charlie, who forbade him from riding, so he directly picked up the magic tube and shone it into the dark hole. Chapter 983. The light from the magic flashlight illuminated the depths of the black hole, and he was surprised to find that it was another small altar. In the center of the altar, there was a chain made of dark magic, binding a strange and disgusting object. It looked like a pile of rotten meat, and these pieces of meat were constantly wriggling. What is so disgusting? Such rich dark magic, and it clearly has the aura of death, similar to the aura of the mutated mermaid, brother. I feel it, it should be this thing that contaminated the mermaids. There is a seal-type magic circle around it, maybe the mermaids sealed this rotten meat here, and as a result the rotten meat broke the seal, and infected a mermaid into a mutated mermaid. List analyzed. He looked at the wriggling meat, and although he felt disgusted, he still wanted to go down to investigate. But before he went down, the rotten meat in the seal quickly condensed into the shape of a beast's claw, and then suddenly grabbed at the entrance of the cave, a strong dragon's aura emitting from the claw, trying to lock onto List. Dragon's aura? List's reaction could not be said to be slow, and he quickly gathered his dragon's fighting energy, blocking the entrance of the black hole, trying to stop the sudden eruption of dragon's aura and the rotten meat that condensed into the shape of a dragon's claw. But as soon as the rotten dragon's claw came into contact with the dragon's fighting energy, it quickly corroded the high-level dragon's fighting energy, and then grabbed at List with the same momentum. Brother, be careful. Achi hurriedly gathered magic. But the fastest to react was the unicorn Charlie. The golden spiral horn on top of his head emitted a strong light, and instantly hit the rotten dragon's claw. Crack. Roar. An indistinct dragon roar resounded, and the rotten dragon claw was blown into pieces by the radiance of Charlie's horn. When it condensed again, it was pulled back to the center of the altar by the dark elemental chain formed by the sealing magic circle of the altar. It turned into a lump of rotten flesh, slowly squirming. It was a big shock. List let out a breath of turbid air, and then looked at the inside of the black hole with lingering fear. What is this thing? Why does it have dragon's aura, and why is there a dragon's roar? This should be part of the dragon, brother. Achi condensed a transparent water shield to block the entrance of the cave, preventing the rotten meat from exploding again. The supreme demon of the dark element is very obvious, and it carries the aura of death. It's hard to tell what type it is. It might be a dark dragon. No, I've read the relevant records of the dark dragon. Although the dark dragon is a dark-type elemental dragon, the dark dragon's nature is corrosion, so it shouldn't have the aura of death. Achi, you often use the 8 Dragons Divine Sword, so you should have a deep understanding of the supreme dark magic on it, List analyzed. In fact, he could infer such a conclusion because of the smoke mission reward, Devil's Trail. He felt that the dark dragon was an elemental dragon and had nothing to do with devils. Instead, it was the rotten meat underneath that resembled the traces of a devil. Achi nodded and said, "What Big Brother said makes sense. It seems that this is indeed not a part of the dark dragon. Then what dragon is it?" "I don't know either. I don't even know if it's part of a dragon. But in any case, the rotten meat sealed by the black hole altar was definitely a source of evil power and was highly dangerous." He asked Achi to add a seal to the entrance of the cave, hoping that it could stop it for a while so that he could find a way to resolve this evil power and investigate the true secret of the rotten meat. "Big Brother, Achi's sealing magic is a bit crude. It can only stop it for half a month, and the sealing magic circle below looks like it's about to be corroded by the rotten meat. This mass of matter can break free at any time. Let's take it one step at a time." List raised his eyebrows. "Maybe we should save the mermaids first, and then find out the origin of the rotten meat from these mermaids. Petrified mermaid statues, Achi has no clue how to resurrect them. However, that mutated mermaid might be able to purify the evil power in her body through soul stripping and see if she can regain her identity as a mermaid." Then let's restore this place to its original state first, and we'll go back the way we came. The experiment of stripping the soul went smoothly. A mass of twisted black and gray magic was stripped from the 10-meter-long mutant mermaid, and it was put into a glass bottle that contained the soul. This mass of supreme magic turned into the shape of an ugly dragon one moment, and then into the shape of an ugly mutant mermaid the next. It was very strange. The mutant mermaid form should be the original supreme magic of the mermaid, and it was infected by this strange evil power. And the shape of the dragon should be the biological form of the power itself, a special dragon. Liszt couldn't help with the research, but his analytical ability was very strong. What kind of dragon could it be? When the mermaid wakes up, maybe we can get some information out of it. After the evil power was stripped away, the tumors on the mutant mermaid's body quickly disappeared, and the grayish-black scales began to fade, and spots of blue appeared. However, she didn't wake up for a few days, but her body gradually recovered, and she gradually had a trace of the mermaid's charm. Her upper body was in the shape of a human, but there were blue fish scale-like patterns on her body. Her lower body was in the shape of a fish tail, and there were new palm-sized scales. Perhaps because she had been infected by the evil power for too long, this mermaid's body was very weak, and overall she didn't fit the description of the mermaid in the legends. She didn't have that kind of noble and insufferably arrogant attitude. Her current state should be similar to the state of Lich Andy after his dragon soul was stripped away, and her body has been hollowed out by the evil power. Lich Andy was already dead. After being used as a guinea pig for a period of time, he completely breathed his last due to the failure of his body's organs. The dragon soul of the sapphire dragon had also been purified, but it was still announced to the public that it was still under treatment, because the sapphire Grand Duke was still struggling and didn't want to die. As long as he didn't die, Liszt didn't intend to return the dragon soul. The sapphire family wouldn't dare to ask for it. Then will the mermaid also follow in Lich Andy's footsteps? Liszt asked. Probably not. The physique of a mermaid is much stronger than that of a human's, and her recovery is also very strong. Maybe she will wake up soon. I have too many things to do, so I'll go back and busy myself for a few days. When the mermaid wakes up, notify me immediately. Okay. Without letting Liszt wait any longer, 3 days later, the mermaid finally woke up. When Liszt rushed to the sea laboratory, he found that the mermaid was lying naked on the beach, basking in the sun, and a chi was riding on the unicorn to communicate with it. The mermaid was a female, and the statue's upper body was clothed. The mermaid's clothes were long gone, but although she was naked, there was no revealing nature. After the tumor was eliminated, her body was left with potholes, and there was no beauty to speak of. Her face was also disfigured, and her hair was so sparse that she was about to go bald. Brother, let me introduce you. This is a descendant of the mermaid race. Her name is Hephaestus Bleage Green Valkyria, Gulvig. The name was about 300 words, more than 100 words longer than the name of the siren, which was about 200 words. Chapter 984. Gulvig, I'll call you Gulvig. Liszt stuttered in the language of the moon. His proficiency in the language of the moon was terrible. He could barely understand it, but he couldn't speak it fluently. After all, he didn't have many opportunities to speak the language of the moon. He didn't expect the mermaids, a race left behind from ancient times, to speak the language of the moon. Of course, the mermaid's language of the moon sounded different from the moon killer's language of the moon. Even a genius like a Chi who was proficient in all kinds of languages, had to guess when communicating with Gulvig. You can call me Gulvig, the king of humans. Gulvig's voice was hoarse. Because of his huge body, his voice was buzzing. Thank you and Her Excellency A Chi for saving my life and freeing me from the evil curse. I didn't continue to be evil. Can you introduce yourself? I'm a mermaid. Before I sealed myself, I was the king of the Fisherman's Sea. I ruled all the seawater and islands in the Fisherman's Sea, as well as all the fishes, prawns and water birds. So you're a respected king. Can you tell me how you sealed yourself in the situation of the sea and land in the era you lived in? Faced with Liszt's question, Gulvig pondered for a moment as if he was recalling the past. Then he slowly replied, the Fisherman's Sea, the Great Western Nation, the Saltwater Tribe, the Deep Water Realm, the Trench Tribe, the Fugitive Nation, and the Lost Sea. These were the last 7 kingdoms of the mermaids. As we sealed ourselves, we were the last generation of mermaids. The mermaid Gulvig began to talk about the ancient past. Since the era of the Moon Empire, the mermaids and mages controlled the sea and land respectively. The human mages built a unified empire on land, while the mermaids scattered many kingdoms in the sea. It said that in ancient times there were two great empires, the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire. They ruled the legendary continent and the Malfa continent. However, when I was born, the mermaids were already shrouded in the shadow of a curse and lost contact with the outside world. My mother sank into exile not long after I was born, and I lost the ability to give birth to the next generation. The mermaids reproduced asexually. A mature mermaid would give birth to offspring when they were the most energetic. Normally, mermaids would only have one descendant, so the kingdom would continue to be passed down. Occasionally twins would be born, and at this time the sea kingdom would split into two countries. Because mermaids also had the risk of dying prematurely, their numbers had always been low, and some kingdoms had even been destroyed. They ruled the sea and had naga, clownfish and other intelligent races under them. However, when Gulvig was born, not only did her mother die early and did not teach her any knowledge, even the fisherman sea kingdom fell into a state of extinction. We are shrouded by the power of the cursed dragon. The seven kingdoms have linked up and are trying to ask for help from the humans. But the continent is in ruins. There is no Moon Empire or Sun Empire. The great mages I heard about when I was a child have all disappeared. The continent was in ruins, the ocean was shrouded by the power of the cursed dragon, and the kingdom ruled by the mermaids was destroyed in despair. The Naga clan was the first to suffer. Although the cursed dragon is dead, its power is too great. It keeps seeping into the sea. The Naga tribe was the first to be polluted. They became the ghosts of the sea and lived in the deep waters in the east. Even we mermaids couldn't cross this dangerous sea, so we called the deep waters the Devil's Sea. So that was the origin of the Devil's Sea. List finally understood, but he had more doubts. What kind of dragon is the cursed dragon? I've never heard of it. In addition to the metal dragon, gem dragon, elemental dragon, and sacred dragon, there are three kinds of evil dragons. They are the cursed dragon, the shadow dragon, and the silent dragon. But in the era I lived in, the evil dragons no longer existed. Only the cursed dragon died in the sea, and the curse has always shrouded the sea, causing the intelligent races in the sea to wither. Evil dragons. List heard about a new sequence of dragons, the cursed dragon, the shadow dragon, and the silent dragon. Gulvig continued to narrate in a somewhat chaotic manner. She did not know which era she lived in. It was probably an era after the fall of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire. Because she lived in the sea and had never interacted with humans on land, the information she knew was limited. But when she was young, she heard from her mother and the other 6 mermaids about the brilliant civilization established by the mages. And in the era she lived in, the Sea Kingdom was facing the curse of the cursed dragon. Every day they fought with the fallen Nagas who had turned into demons. Seeing that the Naga had been completely destroyed and most of the clownfish had also been destroyed, in order to leave a glimmer of hope for the sea, we 7 mermaids finally decided to use our lives as a seal to purify the sea. Unfortunately, we could only purify and remove part of the power of the cursed dragon. With the Devil's Sea as the boundary, the coastal sea was purified by the mermaids, but the Devil's Sea was still polluted by the power of the cursed dragon. I'm afraid that the sea on the Malfa continent has all sunk. There were hundreds of sea kingdoms in their heyday, but unfortunately many mermaids have fallen into demons. Sigh. Gulvig sighed, and sadness appeared on her pitted, wrinkled face. I don't know if it's good or bad that I'm alive. Is the power of the cursed dragon coming to this sea again? Seeing Gulvig's worried face, Hachi could not help but comfort her. Don't worry, I've investigated the flesh of the cursed dragon, and I feel that it no longer has the ability to continue polluting. Countless years have passed, and the sea has enough power to purify itself. And look, this is the supreme demon of the cursed dragon that I stripped from you. She took out the glass bottle containing the supreme demon of the cursed dragon and shook it. The magic condensed into the shape of a mutant mermaid immediately turned into a cloud of mist. Gulvig's eyes were fixed on the glass bottle. It seems to be much weaker. In the era I lived in, the power of the cursed dragon was incredibly strong. All the creatures that had been polluted had fallen into demons, and there was no turning back. Your Excellency Hachi, you are indeed a great magic shooter. List suddenly asked, Gulvig, since the power of the cursed dragon has weakened, can we save the remaining 6 mermaid kings? I don't know. You don't know? We used our lives to purify the power of the cursed dragon. We never thought that we could resurrect them, so I don't know if we can save them. Gulvig shook his head. She was still a little dizzy, as if she had dreamed for 1,000 years. When she opened her eyes, the world was different. The mages had lost their ruling position, and the Dragon Knight had established many human countries and ruled the continent. Now they had begun to expand into the sea. Even the Moon Oracle had become history. Nothing could compare to the vicissitudes of life. Everyone, please vote for Lao Bai in the Golden Keyboard Writers Contest. Chapter 985. Gerwig had just been freed from the curse and her body was very weak. She needed a long time to recuperate. List chatted with her for a long time. Although Gerwig did not have much information because the sea kingdom established by the mermaids was collapsing and isolated, she still managed to restore some historical truth. First of all, during the era of the Moon Empire in the legendary continent, even the sea knew about the influence of magic shooters. Secondly, on the other side of the Devil Sea was the Malfa continent. There used to be a Sun Empire similar to the Moon Empire, which was probably a magic civilization established by humans. The Moon Empire and the Sun Empire collapsed almost at the same time. According to the analysis of the information, there was a great war between humans and dragons on the sea. The Emerald Dragon's hind legs were cut off, the Moon Killer who killed the Moon Dragon, the dragon remains in the Dragon Pit on Flame Island, and the origin of the Fire Dragon and the Smoke Dragon. The cursed dragon died on the sea and polluted the sea. However, that great war was the turning point of the collapse of the magic civilization. After that, the inconspicuous Knight class rose in the legendary continent, and the druid magic, known as the Sun's Child, flourished in the Malfa continent. The sea was polluted by the cursed dragon. Mermaids, nagas and clowns were on the verge of extinction, and degenerate monsters gathered in the Devil Sea. The strongest of the mermaids can fight side by side with high mages. We are naturally the supreme magic creatures that you speak of. Just like you human mages, our supreme magic creatures mostly absorb the mana of the weave. Over the years, the weave has been able to provide us with less and less mana. Gerwig was very emotional. The last 7 mermaids thought that it was the pollution of the cursed dragon that cut off the connection with the weave. I didn't expect that the weave was shrinking, causing us to be unable to resist the pollution of the cursed dragon. Then Gerwig, how strong were you at your peak? I was still far from being a magic shooter, but I could easily kill the super sea monsters you described. In that case, your strength is roughly equivalent to a domain knight, maybe a little more powerful, but there is still a long way to go before you are a magic shooter and a dragon knight. List could not describe Gerwig's strength well. She had supreme magic level, but it came from the weave. Mermaids were not creatures made of supreme magic. In other words, mermaids were a level lower than dragons, phoenixes and unicorns. However, as an intelligent race, mermaids could also cultivate. A powerful mermaid was comparable to a human high mage. King List, I'm sorry that I can't help you. Please take care of the contamination of the cursed dragon and my 6 sisters. King Gulvig, you don't have to be so polite. This is my duty. Please don't call me king anymore. There is no kingdom in the sea. If His Majesty List can purify the crisis of the sea, Gerwig is willing to follow His Majesty and offer the mermaid's heart to rebuild the order of the sea. Gerwig stood up with difficulty and bowed deeply to List. Mermaid's heart? List raised his eyebrows and asked, what is that? The reward for the smoke mission was the mermaid's heart. The contract of the mermaid clan. During the era of the Moon Empire, many mermaids offered their mermaid hearts to human high mages and followed them to explore the truth. Achi curiously asked, is it the same as the elf contract? Gerwig was puzzled. Elf contract? What is an elf contract? Those insects also have a contract? It was List and Achi's turn to be puzzled. As the king of the sea, it was inconceivable that Gerwig had never heard of an elf contract. You don't know about the elf contract? Although humans make more use of the elves, there are also many elves in the sea. Those elves can enhance the growth of plants. Have you mermaids not used the elves? Or do you also make the elves into magic power dust? We don't need magic power dust to assist in our cultivation. We mermaids are innately able to communicate with the weave. I heard that humans like to use elves to make magic power dust. But isn't it very cruel to use elves to make magic power dust? Cruel? It's just some insects. Gerwig was puzzled. How can you use insects to describe elves? Elves are beautiful creatures. When a sprite worm evolves into a lesser sprite, it will gain wisdom. When it continues to evolve into a greater sprite or even a dragon sprite, it will be almost no different from intelligent creatures like humans and mermaids. List was speechless. He felt that the ancients of the magic civilization era had distorted aesthetic standards and unexpectedly looked down on elves. Gerwig was even more puzzled at this time. Your Majesty List, what are you talking about? What sprite worm evolves into lesser sprites or dragon sprites? I don't understand what you mean. Sprite worms can evolve, you don't even know this? I have never heard of elves evolving. They are just some small insects. They are the most commonly used cultivation materials for wizards. Moreover, your majesty list, I have never seen elves evolve. Although I have not lived for a long time, only 142 years, I have never seen any evolved elf in the sea. Hearing this, List and Achi looked at each other and felt that Gerweg was lying. They had encountered Parker, the giant algae sprite, in the waters around Black Horse Island. Gerweg had lived in the sea and had never seen any lesser sprites or greater sprites. This was simply a joke. Wait a minute, I will go and bring a greater sprite over. List decided to expose Gerweg's lies with facts. Achi said directly, "Brother, let Achi go and bring Nami over." It just so happens that Nami has recently harvested a batch of the mangrove potion. Well, very well, bring Nami over. He was not surprised that Nami had harvested the mangrove potion because there was a previous smoke mission that rewarded a new species of mangrove. With the speed of Achi riding the unicorn Charlie, the round trip would only take more than 2 hours. When the mangrove sprite, Nami, sat on Achi's shoulder, curiously looked at the mermaid Gerweg. Gerweg also looked at Nami curiously. Is this the greater sprite you are talking about? A greater sprite evolved from a sprite worm? The surprise in her tone did not seem to be fake. It was as if she was really seeing a greater sprite for the first time. Nami hid behind Achi's hair. She was afraid of the ugly mermaid. Achi, what is it? She is the mermaid Hephaestus Braci Greta Valkyrie? Gerweg. Gerweg, have you really never seen a greater sprite or lesser sprite? I find it hard to believe. Among us humans, although the evolution of sprites is a small probability event, lesser sprites and greater sprites are not uncommon. They are very common creatures. There are also many large and small sprites in the sea. I really haven't seen them. In the time I lived, there were many sprite worms in the fisherman's sea, but they had no other use except as food for some sea monsters. In the fisherman's sea before me, they would catch sprite worms to trade with humans, but with the sea being cursed, this trade has not been carried out for many years. Gerweg shook his head and said, and after careful communication, soon List came to an amazing fact. In the era of the Moon Empire, sprite worms did not evolve. The evolution was likely to have occurred after the Great War. Recommending my friend I Am the Best's latest work, My Back Garden in a Different World, a very powerful book. Please remember this book's original domain name. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version website. Chapter 986. Why Elves Could Evolve. This historical truth had yet to be discovered. In short, the Great War that took place on the sea definitely changed the direction of the entire world's civilization. But anyway, after all, List was not an archaeologist. He just wanted to develop the Flame Islands as soon as possible, so many doubts were put aside for the time being. I will help His Majesty List discipline these ugly fishes. Compared to the era I lived in, their intelligence has declined a lot, but the suppression power from the bloodline is still effective. With Gerweg's command, the millions of ugly fishes officially became slaves. In the Mermaid Kingdom, the ugly fishes were originally a slave race. In fact, the mermaids were the dragon-raising family in the sea. The Naga belonged to the knight class of the Mermaid Kingdom, and the ugly fishes belonged to the civilian class. The rigidity of the class solidification was much more exaggerated than that of humans. However, to really get Gerweg's loyalty, List needed to purify the power of the cursed dragon to prevent the leakage of the seal from causing the sea to be polluted again. The sea was now List's territory, so he had to purify the power of the cursed dragon. Achi stayed in the laboratory on the sea and planned the purification. With the ugly fishes as labor, not to mention a laboratory on the sea, even a city on the sea could be easily built. The Temple of the Ugly Fishes, a typical building of the Mermaid Kingdom, was a masterpiece of the ugly fishes. Of course, in the Mermaid Kingdom, the official name of this temple was the Sea Sacrificial Temple. The Sea Sacrificial Temple was the symbol of the authority of the mermaids. During the heyday of the Mermaid Kingdom, the Sea Sacrificial Temple was everywhere in the sea. All of them were built by enslaving the ugly fishes. Achi, you do research here. I'll go back to the Flame Island first. Let me know if there's any progress. Don't worry, brother. Achi will solve the problem of curse pollution. First, solve the power of the cursed dragon in the trench. Don't touch the Devil's Sea. Wait for me to make a decision. He was worried that Gerweg would trick Achi to solve the fallen mermaids, the fallen Naga, and the fallen ugly fishes in the Devil's Sea. Although he didn't know if there were still devils in the Devil's Sea, it was better to be safe. Achi knows. So, List takes Nami back to the estuary swamp. Nami still has to work hard on the mangrove forest, while he is going to inspect the spring plowing work. Every year after the spring plowing was the period of sprite worm outbreak, and he would often take the time to harvest a wave of them. Most of the sprites in the wild were not of high value. Only sprite worms bred from crops were of high value. As a member of the nobility, even the dragon-rearing family couldn't do without the elves farming. After returning to Firewood Castle and resting for a few days, List received Yevich Waterpeanut's message from the faraway Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. Your Highness, I have already contacted the second prince of Snow Wind Mountain Duchy. The second prince is currently competing with the first prince for the title of successor. Perhaps we can use his ambition to secretly control Snow Wind Mountain Duchy. Tell me the details. The Duke of Snow Wind Mountain, Sarkozy Amethyst, has 2 sons. The eldest son, Sarquis Amethyst, is the first in line of succession. However, his biological mother's identity is somewhat awkward. She was once the dissolute widow of an aristocrat and had already given birth to a son. However, Duke Sarkozy took a fancy to her and married her despite the obstruction of the ministers of the duchy. After giving birth to Sarquis, the aristocrat's widow soon died. Duke Sarkozy then married another aristocrat's daughter and gave birth to his youngest son, Sasuke Amethyst. Second Prince Sasuke and First Prince Sarquis were only 4 years apart in age. Legally speaking, First Prince Sarquis had the right of succession, but because of his mother's identity, many ministers were quite dissatisfied and turned to support Second Prince Sasuke. Duke Sarkozy couldn't make a decision regarding his 2 sons. The first prince was unwilling to lose his position as successor, while the second prince was ambitious and wanted to replace him. As a result, the duchy was divided into 2 factions. Until this year, when Duke Sarkozy's health became worse and worse, the struggle between the 2 princes quickly reached a climax. In order to get support, Sasuke didn't hesitate to get involved with Yevich. He wanted to borrow the Eagle Kingdom's power, behind Yevich. Even today, Yevich still used the Eagle Kingdom's banner. Oh, a melodramatic drama of brothers fighting over the family property. List actually didn't have any conspiracies in mind. He still preferred to fight openly. What position does the Kingdom of Yellowstone Plain have in regards to the fight between these 2? Sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight. Perhaps the King of Yellowstone Plain doesn't even care about the Snow Wind Duchy. The Snow Wind Mountain is located on a plateau, and it is indeed too barren. We should also wait and see who is weaker in the fight. It would be best if these 2 brothers could fight for 8 to 10 years. Then, during the chaos, we can infiltrate the Snow Wind Duchy. In the end, I want to control this country and use it as a buffer for the Fire Kingdom in the legendary continent, List said casually. It wasn't a very clever plan. It was basically a general policy, and the details would naturally be discussed by the development committee. Yevich replied, Your Highness, but I don't have much power to interfere with the internal fight now. The second prince is slightly weaker, and he hopes to borrow a group of high-end combat power from the Eagle Kingdom. I will consider it. Soon I will open the teleportation formation between the Blazing Island and the legendary continent. At that time, materials and knights will be continuously transported over. Tell Sasuke to rest assured in his fight against Sarquis. I can even send a dragon knight to help him. On Earth, the United States did this, supporting a group of small countries and suppressing a group of them. In short, it was to cause internal strife in the small countries. It just so happened that Emily's cultivation had been progressing rapidly recently. Her high-level chi was about to reach perfection, and her run-in with the light green gem dragon Isin was also about to succeed. When the time came, the plan for the Snow Wind Duchy could be handed over to her to carry out. The Duke of the Snow Wind Duchy was still alive. Letting Yevich keep a low profile for now, List quickly left the matter of the Snow Wind Duchy to the development committee. He leisurely toured the farmlands of the major cities, looking for breeding sprite worms. Naturally, he didn't slack off in his cultivation. He was diligent in running to the endless volcanoes to complete Leo's spirit imprint as soon as possible. During this period there was naturally a supply of potions. What he was most concerned about was the potion made from the phoenix perching parasol tree. Your Highness, this batch is the Fire Phoenix potion. Chrissy personally collected the potion refined from the phoenix perching parasol tree and delivered it to Firewood Castle. How is the effect? Not very good. Your Highness can feel it for yourself. After drinking the Fire Phoenix potion and feeling the impact of the magic power, List frowned. I thought the fire-attributed magic power would be very strong, but I didn't expect it to be so weak, even weaker than the effect of the primal chaos potion. Yes, the fire-attributed magic power of the phoenix perching parasol tree is very rich, but the extracted potion never reached the standard. What about the output? The output is also not very high. So useless. List rubbed his temples. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. He thought that after the phoenix perching parasol tree great sprite, infant, became a dragon sprite, the phoenix perching parasol tree would have great achievements. He didn't expect it to be so unqualified in the field of potions. Now, the meaning of the phoenix perching parasol tree was probably to attract fire-attributed birds. How many have you produced? They are all here, the first batch has 800. Well, put them here. Although the fire phoenix potion was bad, it was still useful for training. At most, he would drink more fire phoenix potion to make up for it. He brought the first batch of 800 fire phoenix potions and quickly headed for the endless volcanoes to train with Leo again. Roar! Leo saw that List had brought a new type of potion and was a little unhappy. He wanted the red dragon water. List waved his hand, make do with it. Although the effects of the fire phoenix potion are average, if the quality is not good, the quantity can make up for it. Just take the potion. Only then did Leo reluctantly swallow the fire phoenix potion. However, after the potion entered his stomach, Leo's long and narrow pupils suddenly dilated, and his evil gaze was quickly replaced by surprise. He clearly felt that after the fire phoenix potion entered his stomach, the powerful effect was not at all the unqualified potion that List had described. List, who was telepathically connected, also quickly felt the effects of the fire phoenix potion on Leo. The surge of magic power was of a strength that he had never experienced before. It was not at all inferior to the red dragon water produced by the red and white rose family. It was even better. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.